Our roommate came home late and was cooking. Hey, welcome. Esoteric Doooovidism here. Very excited. In many ways, one of the biggest days in my life. Even I've had bigger days, I guess, more eventful things, but you had a debate in front of hundreds of people, probably thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of people will see it. Subject I'm very passionate about. I spent probably like 20 hours researching for this debate, watching other debates, reading books. This is something I'm always sharp on because I'm constantly talking about it, although I've never actually conducted a formal debate like I did today. So I guess I got Brundle here, who is the man who brought me to JF. He's the one who booked me. He's the one who had confidence in me doing it. And so what do you got?
How are your nerves? How are your nerves at first?
I was basically calm. Saying I played competitive chess as a kid, in whatever reason, or sometimes I lead prayer services. So I was completely calm the whole debate. I was more concerned about my research. Am I saying accurately? Am I presenting the best possible argument? Than than my nerves. I wasn't nervous at all. My heart didn't beat. I felt completely calm and comfortable.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I just know that the first couple times I went on Luke, I mean, my nerves were I was very tense. And then I've been on JF's show a couple of times, where I've called in through Discord for just a couple minutes, and very tense. And then I've been Kaiser.
Sorry, I was echoing. My bad.
All right. Yeah. So I was just imagining. I mean, I guess at this point, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, we've been doing. I mean, you and I both been doing this Doovid for hundreds of hours, so it's like.
I have a background. I said, I was a junior state champion at chess, so that took. I mean, chess is intellectual, but that took a lot of nerves to be able to stare and concentrate at the board. And leading Hebrew prayer services also, where you're just focusing on, am I saying the Hebrew prayers correctly to the right intonation, regardless of what's going on in the congregation, meditation or whatever. But yeah, thank God I didn't have any problem with that. But I was really nervous, kind of intellectually, do I really know what I was talking about? Because this is certainly the biggest forum I've ever spoken.
Yeah,
and it's a topic I feel passionately about. Yeah. I wanted to really make sure I had my arguments down good.
I mean, I'll say that at first, the first couple segments, I feel like if you had gotten your lips unglued from JF's ass, you might have made your strongest argument.
Well, one thing in terms of the research, and I wanted to get down these definition games, because a lot of times these debates reduce into just you're shifting the goalpost, definitions, word games, and I wanted to really get to the heart of the issue without you're trying to win with sophistry. I wanted people to understand what's the current state of science. JF's the top scientist. He's published. He's considering writing a book. He may be on the verge of coming up with revolutionary theory. And I wanted to hear it, so to say, from the professor's mouth. This is what science can explain. This is what science can't explain, so that people would actually it's pretty manic content was saying on Luke, where it's actually pretty reasonable to believe that we have a soul. It's pretty reasonable to believe that thought and consciousness does not arise from the physical, but arises from the soul.
Right, and I think that's kind of where the whole, teleological debate between you and JF really fractured, because whereas you look at, this is the brain, but we can't discern the brain producing thought. The soul is where thought and consciousness comes from. JF is very evidence-based, given that he is a top scientist, and we can see what regions of the brain light up when a subject is exposed to certain stimuli, right? And so for him, that shows that the brain is producing thought, whereas you would say, no, the soul is where the thought is produced. It's the brain that allows the thought to be brought into
manifested. Yeah.
Well, I was trying to clarify to him that we were just debating the evolution. So, like, I mean, if to me to give a positive proposal for the soul and for the evidence of a soul from a scientific perspective, that wasn't my intention tonight. My intention was to show that science cannot explain consciousness. Science has a difficult time even explaining simple cognition or logical functions. And, so the alternative, so to say, the alternative hypothesis that we do in fact have a soul, and that's the seat. I didn't prepare to argue positively for the soul. So, I mean, I know there are arguments. I've thought about that before, but I put a lot of preparation specifically on the biology and the science of evolution, as opposed to the positive arguments for a soul.
Yeah, and Doovid, I'm just breaking your balls. You did it awesome.
I agree. I could have done better. I did a lot of research.
No, I think honestly, the best part. I mean, it finished. I mean, the connection between atheism as sort of giving people license to, or evolution giving people license to believe in atheism, and that leading to degeneracy as people are not looking over their shoulder thinking God is watching. I mean, it's an incredibly strong argument, even from just a utilitarian perspective.
Yeah, as an atheist, I agree with that.
So
there is utility to faith-based systems.
Yeah, and so I think you finished on a high note. I mean, JF multiple times through that debate was talking about another episode. I mean, you'll be back, man. I mean, look, he's one of the biggest stages on YouTube. I mean, I'm not sure who gets more live viewers than him. Medicare does when he wants to live stream, but I think that's about it.
Well, definitely as far as consistent YouTube goes, like with a schedule, yeah, JF has got the throne at this point.
And he's a expert in the field of evolution. I mean, he could be like the next Richard Dawkins to some extent. I was watching, 1996 Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, who was at Oxford, debating Richard Dawkins, who was at Oxford at the same time. That's over 20 years ago. And, now Shmuley Boteach's probably the most famous rabbi, at least in popular media in the world. And Richard Dawkins is still
very popular.
So I could see having this debate, like every few years with JF, and if he actually publishes his book and continues moving on, like chances are he's going to stick with his evolutionary things. I didn't expect to defeat him. That's why I wanted to
right
get to.
I think you definitely did a good job of kind of holding your own, and you didn't. I don't think you got pummeled by any means. I thought it was a great episode. I think that you definitely held your own, which is amazing, because normally when you go into those type of conversations, coming from your thought process, it's either people they either sit there and confuse meanings and try to just kind of confuse their opponent, or they just get completely pummeled. Whereas you kind of you held your own. You're able to hold consistent arguments and have a good conversation.
I watched Deepak Chopra debating Richard Dawkins. I watched probably like 20 hours of debates on YouTube. Just earlier today, I rewatched Jan Dyer's JF debate, and I watched the famous debate that had the millions of views of Bill Nye the Science Guy and Ham from the Bible Museum.
Yeah. Which Ken Ham's one of those just tries to confuse people with semantics type debater. He doesn't really.
I think legitimately too. Like I wasn't trying to beat him. My goal was the search for truth, and I enjoyed being able to. This is something to me. I consider it red pilling. Like I red pill people by convincing them that evolution is false. And kind of like I'm like a Hare Krishna. I'm Hasidic, but I affiliate with like the Hare Krishnas, and kind of like you're not your body, you're your soul. What you thought isn't true. And to some extent, like I consider that a form of red pilling, is convincing people that evolution's not true. I do it all the time, so it was a great honor in some extent to be able to go up against the leading voice for evolution on at least the dark web.
That's a huge stage for sure.
Yeah, and so hold on real quick. I just want to Kaiser and Rory, you guys have a show. I want you to introduce yourselves to the audience because I know Kaiser's messaged me before, after the Richard Spencer show, kind of talking about maybe doing something. It's nice to finally talk to you guys. Like, tell us a little about what your show's all about.
Our show, we're on YouTube every Tuesdays, Fridays, 9 Eastern, and we really just have conversations with different people about all kinds of different subjects. We don't really have a kind of a set where we're going on a specific topic. The topics change per show. We just like to have interesting conversations with interesting people. That's really what it's about.
Do you guys have a political bent, right wingers, left wingers?
I would say that we're definitely more right wing for sure. We're definitely not left. But I don't think that it doesn't really kind of, I don't know. The show's not based around, sucking Trump's dick or anything like that. We're very much, hey, if they're left wing and they can hold a decent conversation, we can have a decent conversation. But I'm definitely, more right leaning for sure. I would say the same for Kaiser.
For sure. We're very interested in facts and, where sort of statistics bear out and that sort of thing. So sometimes it gets frustrating. We tried to have a conversation with some black nationalists, and that devolved quickly into a shit show.
It was a very entertaining show, but it was definitely frustrating at the moment. But as I go back, it was really hard to get a reading because we invited one guy on and he was just kind of one of those, it first started with black people were the original Native Americans. He believes all kinds of nonsense. And then he said, hey, can I bring a couple of my buddies on during the show? And I was like, sure. So they each kind of had their own, but there was one guy that was definitely like, you guys are just cave beasts, freaking mayonnaise smelling, freaking, it was real bad. Like, just a straight up, hey, I hate white people regardless. So it made for an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, I actually, on Luke Ford's show, I ended up talking to Hotep Jesus, and he and I did not get along very much.
Yeah.
He's kind of a stupid fucker. But.
Yeah, that was what we got from it. We actually ended up doing a follow-up show abnormal to our schedule on a Sunday.
We brought on Yosef Ozia, who is a black Jewish YouTuber.
Yeah, it was a friend of ours. We brought him on, and he was totally like backing us up. He was kind of on our side, and they immediately, as soon as he didn't buy into their stuff, they're like, oh well, you're a coon and an Uncle Tom, typical stuff. But it was definitely an interesting show. I don't mind talking to people I disagree with. I find it can be a lot of fun. You don't want to get in an echo chamber,
Yeah, true. So Doovid, I noticed Halsey did not super chat his usual $50 bill to JF tonight. Think he's displeased with JF going off the reservation and bringing you on.
Was it too much Jew for the JF show? Is that what it was?
I muted myself because I was eating blueberries, but it could be he likes to be the only Jew. And so he likes to be the voice of Judaism or whatever. So you're like, that's going to ruin his whole game when there's multiple Jews, or like God forbid, when you're at the club and there's only like one black, and then you bring in a second black, and the two are fighting with each other. That happens also with the Jews. So you have like your alt-right group who have a token Jewish friend, and then you bring in another Jew, and you get more slack from your fellow Jew than anybody else.
You meet your Jew quota, and then it's just too much.
Well, the people feel like they're going to be replaced. So it's like, okay, we're going to be multicultural. Next thing you know, it's going to be a whole bunch of Jews, or they feel like there's only room for one Jew. So it's like me or you, we got to fight it out.
Yeah.
See, that's funny because we've got two Jews that we regularly interact with, don't we, Rory?
Yeah. We've been trying to. I've been trying to get like a black Israelite to come on and debate Yosef, because he's an actual black Jew. Like his family is Jewish, but he's also black, and and then there's these black Israelites, which really don't have any connection to Israel or Judaism at all, and they're trying to rewrite history as they do. So I found that to be, but it's so hard to actually get them to stick to any kind of schedule and actually come on and debate what they have to say.
Yeah, I think I mean, you guys as somebody who has shows like, I've got, I kind of come out of the alt-right circles, and a lot of people like, I get a lot of criticism for like platforming people that sort of aren't, like either they're Jews or they don't like fully agree with the program kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I find that like you have to have people like that disagree. Like it makes for a lot better content. It's a lot more interesting to actually do the show, and like there's actually something productive that comes out of it instead of like a circle jerk.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. We actually had Samaria from the Revolutionary Conservative come on and debate Yosef on, ethno-nationalism versus Civ Nash. And it was a pretty decent show. I don't think Yosef held up his end of the bargain when it came to arguing for Civ Nash at all. So, but it seems like that debate's kind of like that's kind of the dead horse that's been beat. So I don't know if we've had that debate a couple times on our show now. I don't know if we're going to do that anymore. At least for a while, it's kind of been beat dead.
Yeah, it's you got to mix it up. I mean, it's funny. It's like there was people I talked to that felt like, did you guys catch like CV on JF? I think what was that Tuesday, David?
Oh yeah,
we were actually on Yosef's show with CV just a couple weeks ago.
We asked CV if traps were gay.
Yeah,
but people are like, oh, Halsey, because Halsey is like CV's. Halsey has gotten CV on Worski, gotten CV on JF, right? And sort of like been pimping CV. Like, oh, why is Halsey pushing CV? He wants to distract from the JQ and things like that. And it's like, it's not that. Like, first of all, like having CV on is interesting because like, how often are you gonna get like someone who's just like a dyed-in-the-wool leftist, who's frankly like not an idiot? I mean,
that's true.
I think CV's full of shit and is like engages in sophistry and is just like not intellectually honest, but is definitely skilled in terms of debate, and
which makes for an interesting conversation.
It does, and it's like we can't. How many alt-right shows can get a leftist tranny on the show?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I'm not. I mean, you're more like a shock jock. I'm more purpose-driven and theological. Like, so I don't like talking just to talk. Like, I like discussions and driven and topic. And I'm not. But it is.
But dude, it is important because like it's the left-wing point of view. Like it's one. There is the entertainment factor. Okay, that is that. But like secondarily, like that conversation isn't really available because leftists refuse to go on alt-right platforms and they deplatform like right.
And when they do, they're fucking absolute complete morons that can't actually have a valid conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
At least with CV, you can actually have an intellectual conversation. You may not agree, and you'll find where you're areas where you find that you just kind of just kind of moving the goalpost. You're not really holding to the argument, but at least like. It's a lot more intellectual conversation that actually you find some meaning out of it at the end.
Duvid, so it's not just entertainment.
Yeah, because if it was just entertainment, then you would just have any random lefty on just squalling because that's funny as shit for people to watch.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It's like comparing the. It's like comparing the Tariq Nasheed versus Jared Taylor video to what we saw tonight. There was definitely more of an intellectual bent in the conversation between Doovid and JF than what we saw with the Tariq Nasheed video that Cup-Delasta did.
Yeah, absolutely. The one where he debated Taylor. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no question. I think... Let me say, Doovid, do you think has you and you think you're going to be the evolution guy, the science guy on JF show, or do you think you guys will do multiculturalism and the JQ as well?
Well, I'm messaging him right now. Like, I think really I should do the JQ. That would be interesting, and he could put me up like blood sports with some of the biggest names in the alt-right.
Yeah, like Spencer.
But I'm happy.
That'd be a great conversation. Yeah,
I'm happy to, pure autism, and like if he wants to go over his book with me, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy. He's got a good show going. Like I'm not gonna. You're right. I'm not an ass kisser, and that's not my style. But I'm just saying, like he's got a profitable venture. He's got a good show going. He's professional. He's got his game down. So I'd probably be happy to stream with him
for whatever he wants to do.
Well, I say whatever. I'm not going to like sell my soul or something, but I'm saying, yeah, I mean, if he wants me as like his science advisor, I mean, not advisor, but just to bring me on to discuss his book, I'm happy to do that if he wants to continue these science debates. And he might not find someone better than me, I mean, relatively, in terms of like Jan Dyer. I have a background in physics and mathematics, and maybe Jan Dyer doesn't actually have that background. He might, theologically, you'd be a better debater or know.
Kaiser, I think you got some audio coming through, bro.
Not me.
No, I think we're fine right now.
Or is that just?
Yeah, Doovid, I think. Yeah, man. I mean, it's definitely you got to respect the hierarchy, man. And so he's high up on the food chain. So whatever he wants to do, you do. And it's like, look, man, you got 25 people watching right now. We had like 20 right off the bat. I mean, this channel, I mean, I think the one time you approached 20, you had Plotinus on for like 4 hours. So, it's these things, you'll grow your own channel. People come watch you. You'll be able to transmit your ideas on your terms, and at your time,
Yeah, oh, it's definitely like that's one thing with YouTube, where it's like, especially these days, it's post blood sports days, that no matter what you're saying, it's hard to build your audience. It's all about kind of getting the people on who already have the audience or going on their show or whatever it may be.
It's true. The networking,
different purposes and values. So if you're like, okay, you want to make a living out of it, you want to make a business out of it, or you want to, just be popular or entertaining.
I just want to kind of get out to enough people. I don't really care about making money.
That's
like,
to me, I would
love to have a show that had a couple hundred viewers and like that live or more, just for the fact that you get that interaction with the audience. It makes it lively, it makes it more entertaining, it makes it more fun to do.
Well, it's like Luke Ford or something, like current events, or even JF. Like, okay, do I really Trump's new pick, Supreme Court justice, does Luke Ford really have something to add to that issue? Does JF really have something to add to that issue? He has an area of expertise, and if it's white nationalism, if it's the ethno-state, biology, evolution, certain topics, but is he really going to be intelligent to talk about every single issue? And it's kind of like Luke Ford, like, okay, Brundle, what do you think about President Trump's Supreme Court, new vacancies? Like, do you actually have something intelligent to say about that? And if you enjoy talking, you just want to be a talking head, you have the platform, you have your viewers, and people are like, okay, yeah, I'll listen to your opinion and basically about every current event. But to me, that's not my desire. I have specific issues I want to talk about, and I'd rather have my content with 2 or 3 people that are serious than talk about something that's not interesting to me.
Yeah, but Doovid, you could have, by going on JF and being exposed to 10,000 people, instead of being with 2 or 3 people that are serious, like you could have 20 or 30 people that are serious. Is kind of the point.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm not saying like you have to make your content. You don't have to become JF. You don't have to become Luke Ford, but to Rory's point, like, I mean, look, Doovid, you and I never, like, I never would have had Richard Spencer Frame Game on my channel, and you never would have ended up on JF's radar if it wasn't for the fact that we initially got our foot in the door with an audience on Luke's show. Yeah, like, it never would have happened.
By mentioning, I spent $100 in books. I ordered like $100 worth of books, preparation for this debate.
Yeah.
Like I read probably chapters out of a few of them. I spent a good 20-30 hours preparing for the debate. I wanted to know what I was talking about. Judaism is something I know a lot about. I've spent thousands and thousands of hours. I studied full time in Israel, and these type topics I could talk about. That's why I said, like, it just gets reduced to kind of like ask the rabbi. So am I really putting something forward, or it's just that you want to have like a extreme and people are going to pick my brain about Jewish knowledge? And I would rather topically stream on different things like we did, going over demographics or research something. And that's why I said good content. I'm sure JF, he produces good content. You take more time researching your show than your actual show, as opposed to, maybe, if you become like a big name, like, and even Andy Worski, it fell apart after it. You could just wing it. Like, I got my show, I got my tens of thousands of viewers, people are rolling in money, you got the sponsors, and you could just kind of wing it and, talk out of your ass.
No, that's
and that's why JF quit Worski. He was like,
that kind of leads to your downfall, over time, though, if you kind of lose your bearings, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is, Doovid,
so you have your areas of expertise, and you say, okay, you're Brundle's more like you're bringing people together, but I think that's like, come back to like me and Rodney, we're having like, what's the advantage of including you in it? What are you bringing to it besides, okay, you hooked us
the
up
audience
together.
I bring the audience. This is the thing, like JF, even if, for instance, like JF doesn't bring like knowledge on every single topic, he brings an audience that is like the lifeblood of this whole thing. Again, like, if you care about,
it's
you're
a lot
not
of work,
like I can't believe, hold on, I can't believe that you don't make these videos because you don't care whether someone watches your, like, you're transmitting your ideas for a reason. And
but I was saying I have what I want to put my content out, and I'd rather put the content out I want for a handful of people than put out content.
Then change your content. I agree. No question. I'm not saying change what your content is at all. That's not what I'm saying.
It just gives more exposure to the same content.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, if you want to do a deep dive on, like, the lineages that exist in the Torah, I mean, I would watch that. I'm fascinated by.
Oh yeah, that'd be a great conversation.
But he never would have known to watch it if you hadn't gone on JF.
Exactly, you would just be one of the other million channels on YouTube.
Well, I'm doing two points. Also, is that I'm pretty up to date on what content is currently available. What content's available in English, if there's content available on these subjects, but it's in Hebrew or Yiddish and not available in English, or if it's something that there's almost no content available. And so, I mean, really, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of research. You have to be at the top of the game. And you might be able to get, there's so many like rabbis or Jews with micro streams that are putting out basic information. So like, why are you going to choose my page when there's hundreds of other people? And why am I going to bother?
Because I saw you on JF.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm saying, why am I going to bother duplicating content to that extent? Why don't I just tell you, if that's what you want to see, there's Professor Henry.
But I wouldn't. But the thing is I wouldn't know that I wanted to see it until you put it out. That's the thing is that there's the thing is the sea of YouTube is awash with content.
Why wouldn't I just refer you to someone that I recommend?
And people would come to you, and people would watch you to get your referrals. Like,
exactly,
David. Yeah. It's like you're missing.
The thing is, I wouldn't know that I wanted to see that. I know that, hey, I enjoy the content that Doovid's putting out. I'm gonna watch him when he puts out a video. I don't know that, hey, these other 10 rabbis have put out that content. I didn't even know that I even wanted to know that content.
I had a feeling that JF really enjoyed himself tonight. This is his passion. Like, he does all the other stuff and speaks to people, but I'm saying this is his passion.
Yeah.
Evolution.
Oh, yeah, he loves evolution for sure.
He's trying to publish papers. He's trying to come up with theories. He probably spends like hours every day reading and studying, thinking about these things in the same way that this was my passion. I wanted to debate someone again, who really knew evolution against it. I think he enjoyed himself.
Like here's the thing, dude. It's like, you don't like analytical chick, for instance, like toils and anonymity, like, because like there's so many channels that like don't understand and like you're guilty of this. I'm hearing it out of your mouth, and I'm constantly trying to explain to you that like you've got to understand like the nature of the beast, and that like it's not necessarily about making money from this, but like I said, like you can't deny to me that like you care about like transmitting ideas and like having a dialogue with an audience, and like
well, I do,
in order to get an audience, like you have to do certain things. Like one, like networking within the people that already have audiences is important. Like you did that tonight. You do it when you come on my show too, to a lesser degree. And like, it may be like, I'm having a JQ debate with someone. Like a million JQ debates have happened before, but like you haven't done it, and people are not drawn like just to the argument. Like the words and the ideas do not stand alone as objects. Like they come from a person who has charisma and a personality that people connect to. Like people connect and decide what content they want to watch, like on an emotional level.
For sure.
I'm a pretty purpose-driven person. Like, you can see all the books I read. People like, you want to hang out, like, well, what for? What do you want to do? He's like, you just want to hang out. Like, I don't really do like entertainment. I don't watch movies. I don't listen to music. I don't go to parties. So like generally I'm pretty purpose-driven. I'm not sure if that's how you function. So, when I'm thinking about the streaming, like I'm thinking purpose. I don't want to stream just for the sake of streaming. I want some, either I have knowledge that other people don't and I'm sharing it, or I'm gaining knowledge or networking, or I'm doing a good deed, or some, but I have to have a purpose or I lose interest, and I feel
for sure, David.
Especially someone who loves my research. I love doing research, and time is limited, and I know there's so much more I need to know, and it's just like I can't afford to spend the time because my research, my study is, let alone like I haven't been able to meet the right woman, build up a family. I got to make a living, I could do part-time work. I'm constantly thinking about improving my career. So, you're very purpose-driven on that. And I think that's a character trait. I think a lot of people aren't so driven in that sense, and they're just kind of happy to hang out and talk, and they don't have such a drive behind them to research, study, accomplish.
Yeah, I'm kind of at the opposite end of that, where it's I'm already married, 5 kids, and
holy shit, dude! How old are you?
I'm 35.
Oh, congratulations!
I own my own company, so it's like now I can take the time at in the evening times once the family goes to bed to do these streams and learn things from other people and have interesting conversations. And if it was 5-10 years ago, I wouldn't have the time, because I was in that same where I was where I was just so focused on building my career and making sure everything was situated.
I've always been an academic. I never worked. I'm already 40. I've never worked really more than part-time my whole life. And I've worked most of my life, but usually only part-time. And I've dedicated 10 years as an adult to full-time study. And even when I was working, I was always studying. So that's my thing. I'm an academic, but I appreciate your demeanor, because I know a lot of people, type people who come to synagogue or different events, because you work, you're drained, you only have a little bit of time, and you want to, kind of like drain off the energy. It's like, okay, you could buy season tickets to your local stadium, or you could see a movie. My dad watches a movie every night, basically. He's a doctor. He gets up early, he works all day, and he comes home, he watches a movie. Sometimes reads a book while he's watching the movie, and then goes to sleep and does the same thing the next day.
Yeah, and David,
I can see that's the Fox News generation, that this new generation, that you don't want to watch Fox News. You'd rather be on your home stream talking than watching cable TV.
I cut all that stuff.
or David, there's like at least 4 people in the chat right now that are like totally new to our circle. So like that you've brought in from JF. I mean, just right now, and it's freaking after midnight on the East Coast. So
I put
Yeah,
the
I was
link in the
actually
chat if
going
anyone
to
wants
bed,
to.
and Kaiser said, "Hey, let's jump into this." I was like, "Okay, sounds good."
Links in the chat if anyone wants to pop in. Like, I'm not sure if people had like, you know, like we're adding like, you know, Duvid, I was listening and you should have said this, or, you know, like critiques or certain aspects that you could have went further on. If that's why I was thinking originally when I came on that people were gonna, you know, talk about what he could have said and what I could have said.
Okay, so in that kind of spirit, I kind of said it earlier when I was telling, you know, the very fundamental pieces of your opposing ideas are so different that neither of you was going to convince the other that what you had to say was the correct theory.
So that
being said, you did very well.
I mean, he's a. Yeah, I'm saying both of us were doing our best to argue a big topic. You know, saying so. I'm like a lay rabbi, and I think about this all the time. And he's a, you know, geneticist who's now has a show and thinks about this topic all the time. So it was basically, you know, the evolution debate. He took the affirmative, I took the negative, and I put a lot of research into it. I doubt he put that much research into it, but I mean, he's put, you know, thousands of hours over his lifetime that he probably didn't need to, you know, actually prep for the arguments.
And just real quick before you guys get into this, I gotta go, Duvid, but great.
Yeah, I appreciate
job
you booking me. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, nice talking to you, Brendel.
Yeah, man, we'll talk to you. Yeah, Kaiser, Rory, good to talk to you guys. I will definitely take you up on the invite to go on
Brendel's
your
the
channel.
type guy, he'll just pop onto your stream. I'm more likely
Hey,
you're
that
gonna have
sounds
to,
great.
Yeah, we'll definitely
for
coordinate.
me, you're more likely to have like a topic and it's prearranged, like that what we're going to be talking about. But like Brundle, if you get him in your blogos, streamosphere, he'll probably just talk on, you know, hop on and talk about anything.
Yeah, and I actually took all of my videos unlisted today.
Oh man, who said the naughty thing?
No, well, I'm not really, you know, Duvid knows what happened basically, but you know, I gotta count. I'm trying to come to some resolution on my whole streaming situation. You know, I hit 1,000 subs. I'm trying to get monetized. I'm trying to like do something real with this, but I'm not getting a lot of support on the home front.
Oh, is this your old lady still?
Yeah, the old lady.
Does that affect your monetization to unlist your videos?
I don't think it affects monetization to unlist. Like, I have the watch hours and the subs. I don't think it really matters. But so I, you know, my streaming future on my channel is uncertain at this point. If it ever gets going, I would absolutely have you fellas on.
And vice versa, man. You're welcome anytime over at Verbo Tempestas.
Yeah. I will. We'll talk. Okay. All right. You guys have a good night.
You too, brother.
Okay. I mean, did you guys want to, you know, talk? I mean, Judaism obviously is my specialty. I'm a civil engineer in profession, property construction management. Or did you want to talk evolution, or you got like
well, I'd kind of like
Judaism?
I'd like to talk about how you think that the U.S. needs to multiculturalism. Yeah, I think that's a kind of something that I would like to hear an explanation on for why that is good for Jews and how that would be good for America in general.
I've talked about this many times now, and you're saying by nature, you know, Jews as a minority. I mean, the Red Elephant hit me on that right when he came on, and you know, put it to two different reasons. One, protection of minority status, that it's less likely to suffer of being a minority when there's multiple minorities. So you know, that protective status, and that probably is not unique to Jews. That would apply to any minority. That any minority is more likely to get have problems if there's just one majority and one minority, as opposed to multiple minorities or no majority. And then, the essential function as a Jew, that Jews are somewhat management class, middlemen, financial roles. And, the Bible calls us a priest to nations, that generally we function as intermediaries between different people. And you could argue, you don't necessarily need the Jew to be your intermediary, but historically that's the function we do. We thrive better like that. I made a point on Saturday night going over demographic data. I'm saying Jews usually live in multicultural urban areas.
Yeah, I watched that stream actually. And yeah, you're right. Yeah, Jews tend to live in urban areas, very metropolitan areas.
But also, don't you think that Jews tend to thrive within white majority nations? You don't see them thriving within, nations that are third world shitholes because there's nothing to manage, right?
I mean, relatively, Jews thrive everywhere, and so Jews will, trend upper middle class anywhere. So if the white nations are the most prosperous, will on average be like upper middle class. But there's Jews everywhere. You're relatively in the recent history of the world, from a world history perspective, the leading nations have been white nations. But when the Islamic, during the Golden Age, most of the Jews were in Baghdad. When Rome was the major power, you had a lot of Jews centered in Rome. When Babylon, Egypt were the Jews center in the world powers, and there's Jews everywhere. In Jews in India and China, although there's a smaller number. You think Jews in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand.
The white countries.
Well, because those are the ones that are currently, if you look at a GDP economically, you say, okay, if a Jew wants to thrive, where we go,
where the money is, right? Where there is an area to thrive. Obviously you're not going to go to some third world shithole or say like Venezuela where, the money.
Well, we do. I'm saying there's a lot there. But the majority, it has to be an open environment that we could advance in. Depends on the laws. If it's open capitalist market like America, or, if it's like Japan or South Korea. So, there's not, even though, maybe Japan has just as high a GDP or standard of living as any European country, but it's not as conducive to success for outsiders like Jews to come in and set up and be capitalists, and the economic structure is not the same as America. So America is unique in that sense. Even the European countries aren't as conducive to success. But generally Jews will go to where the biggest opportunity is.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
So presumably,
like anybody else.
Well, because Jews are intrinsically international people and like wanderers. I'm saying, it's in the Bible. There's a long history of Jews migrating and moving places. And even as a Jew, okay, I'm an American. Both my grandparents, I'm only a half Jew. But both my grandparents served in the World War II. I'm pretty comfortable in my American status. But maybe in your sense, you're less likely to pick up and leave than I am, being a Jew. So, God forbid if America declined and economically was worse, you might be less likely to okay, I'm going to pick up and try my chances in India or someplace else. You might feel more grounded, like your blood and soil type arguments. Or say, okay, I'm a Jew, I have some blood and soil here, a few generations, but going back, my blood and soil is in Europe and Israel and the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, my family's been here since the formation of the country, so yeah, we're pretty ingrained.
Same here.
We're pretty ingrained to the place, but
I might pick up and do business in China or something.
Yeah,
the new global competitive world. But saying just to throw out random numbers, if you're making you could make $100,000 a year now in this present state of America, and if things got worse and now all of a sudden you're down to making $25,000 a year, and you could go to Japan and
I totally would. Yeah, I would.
$50,000 a year. Are you going to pick up and move to Japan to make double the money, or are you going to keep your lot here in America?
I personally would, but I'm a little different than most, you know,
you would pick up and move
people. Yeah, oh yeah, I would.
Here's my question, because inevitably, you know, Europeans will be extinct. I mean, that's just a mathematical fact as of, you know, current birth rates and trends.
That's, I mean, you're purposely using a poor word. I'm saying, like, no, I mean, Europeans aren't going extinct. I'm saying we know the population, if they're 8%, Europeans might have declining power, declining regional control. You know, God forbid, if they reach minority status, they might suffer the type of pains that minorities suffer and oppression and stuff like that. But extinct, obviously, that's a pretty far stretch.
Well, due to interbreeding and all of that, I mean, we're going to see Europeans decline to a point where we'll be functionally extinct in terms of our influence on the world stage.
I'd argue, you know, multicultural. So I'd argue multiculturalism, you know, from a non-Jewish point of view. So I'm saying, just because multiculturalism, if you were going to argue, okay, you as a Jew, multiculturalism in America is in your interest. Me as a white man, if, you know, however you self-identify, multiculturalism is not in my interest. And I would propose to make that argument also, that you're factually incorrect, and multiculturalism is in fact in your best interest.
Well, how's the multiculturalism working out in Africa, South Africa specifically?
Well, I don't know if South Africa's
there's a murder, there's a rural murder per day, at least one.
Well, I'm saying that's the example that you know, that I mentioned about the protection of multiculturalism implies multiple cultures as opposed to just two cultures. So if you just
no, you do have multiple cultures in South Africa. You have Indians, you have certainly the Afrikaner population, but you also have various native tribes such as the Kaishan, and so you do have multiculturalism as we understand it in South Africa. However, the animus has been strictly towards the Boer, the Afrikaner. You're not seeing Indians, you know, from the subcontinent being murdered at the same rate that whites are.
Yeah, but saying that's you're saying if you had a real multicultural status in South Africa, whites would probably be substantially safer. And so you have an
but that is not what the numbers are bearing out, though.
There's actually quite a few Jews in South Africa, and I even have, you know,
they're not being murdered off, right? So that's the point.
They're facing some of the same. Jews in general are facing some of the same persecution as whites. Jews might be considered white in South Africa, and, you know, anti-Israel BDS sentiment, boycott, divestment, sanctions is pretty popular in Israel. But I'm saying South Africa, I believe you have the ANC, the African National, you know, like the political party that controls South African politics is African nationalism. So it's not like multicultural. I mean, there's Indians in South Africa, and there's, you know, a few different.
Gandhi went to law school in South Africa.
Yeah, but they don't really have political power. You don't have a multicultural. You basically have African black nationalism.
So what happens? So what happens in European nations when whites become the minority?
Well, saying, who do they become the minority to? So I'm saying, if whites, you know, if you listen to Content Watcher Manic, he keeps changing his name. We're saying if whites are still a plurality as opposed to a minority. So in general, South Africa, it's blacks and whites. And, you know, so the main player is basically blacks, and blacks have became dominant, and whites are a minority, and now they're suffering oppression. In Europe, who's going to become the majority? You're saying, okay, Muslims, Indians,
Arabs,
Chinese. We're saying, okay, if you're talking that Arabs, Muslims became the majority in Europe, yeah, that might happen. If all of a sudden you had 60% of a European country was monolithic Arab Muslims.
And the numbers are going to bear out for that. I mean, when you
don't think so. I was saying
marrying 4 different wives and having, you know, 10 to 12 children, yeah, you're certainly going to have the native population who takes one wife and has maybe 2 children become the minority in, you know, less than 100 years.
I don't think the statistics are that. You know, so if you're talking about
these are
multiculturalism versus.
I'm just saying things that come from the mouths of these people that are moving into Europe.
But I'm saying, I mean, you appreciate the difference I'm trying to point out when you have 2 dominant races and one becomes more populous than the other, as opposed when you have, you know,
but one will always
10
become more populous than the other.
It's like in America, you have African Americans at like 15% of the population. You have Hispanics at like 15% of the population, and you know, whites at like 70, and all the other ones are like 1 or 2% right now. Muslims,
that's not
Chinese,
correct, really.
Well, I was saying generally that beside everyone's under 2%. I actually went through the Pew data.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know, so you got, if you got like 2% Muslims, 2% Hindu,
Yeah, it's
2%
not a problem
Chinese,
when they're below
2% Jews,
2%.
and then you have like
Islam starts taking root, and you get to about 10%. Then you have a huge problem.
Well, I don't know what's the problem. I'm saying, what's the difference if you were in a plurality? Let's say America switched and it was 40% white, 20% Hispanic, 15% black, 10% Arab, 10% Indian, 10% Chinese, and, you know, like a few percent, you know, Japanese.
Here's the unique thing about Islam.
Multiculturalism. But I mean, you appreciate the difference when I say multiculturalism. I'm not talking about, you know, one minority becoming dominant. I'm talking about more and more different types of people coming together.
But that you're assuming that all these people behave the same. Which is
they all behave differently.
They all behave differently. Yeah, humans around the world behave.
They all breed differently. Yeah, but they breed differently. So you're going to see one become the majority.
Here's the unique.
That's by definition multiculturalism. You have a whole bunch of different type people. We meet. You know, it's like civic nationalism, where.
But that can never be sustained. Is what I'm trying to say. My point is, like, that can never be sustained, because if you have different breeding patterns within different groups, one will become the majority. And then that multicultural state that you're saying breaks down, and then one becomes a majority.
You consider,
one becomes.
You're not like white nationalist. You consider yourself like a Trump supporting mainstream writer.
Yeah, we're not alt-right or anything like that.
You're not like ethno state people. You're like a basic make America great again Trump supporter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Me personally, I'm kind of on the fence. I think that America functions better as a white majority. I'm not saying that it should be all white or anything like that. I think you should definitely, you know, you're always going to have a mix. That's part of the American spirit. You're always going to have a mix of different cultures and different things like that. But I think that it's statistically proven that European nations that are built on European principles function better when they are
the two main majority that are facing you today, as, you know, mainstream right Trump supporters, in terms of this immigration debate. And one of them is the backlog of Indian visa holders. There's like a few million Indian people from India working, mostly high-skilled, law-abiding, tax-paying people that are filling high-skilled functions. And there's like a few million on a backlog, and there's pressure to say Trump could create a policy in 1 million Indians who are already in America, already working here, fulfilling largely, you know, like IT, engineering, medical, high education jobs, would get citizenship, and all of a sudden, like the 1 million foreign Indian workers would be U.S. citizens. And then the Muslim ban. The Supreme Court just held up the Muslim ban, and now we're talking about, what about Christians from those countries? That you know, we put the ban on the countries that have those. They would say, okay, but we're going to let in Christians from Iraq and Syria in these different countries. So I think, if you consider yourself on the fence, these are the issues hitting you right now. Like, are you against it? Do you mind giving 1 million Indian visa holders U.S. citizenship? And do you mind letting in hundreds of thousands of Arab Christians? Or even that you're against?
I'm against that. Against both of those.
I'm against that. Yeah.
I mean, because they're not white, or basically. But you're saying.
Well, at this point, like, if whites were sitting at, you know, say an 85% majority, then I would think about it. But at this point, our numbers are already declining so greatly that This nation that was founded by Europeans on European principles is being wiped out of the European spirit.
But I'm talking, so there's two different levels. So if you just want to have a homogenous, so you're founded on somewhat European principles.
Not somewhat, wholly European principles.
What I'm saying, because
I would say that we would go back to a something like pre-1965 immigration principle, to where you would maintain the status quo. Demographic.
You would have to principle. Put your percentage in there, but like I think biblical principles are probably a third to half of American values, and then your European values, and if it coming from the Romans, the Greek, or the Enlightenment, or different things.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, if you consider biblical values European values, they're probably not. Biblical values aren't European values.
No, they're not. Wotan Wotan and Odin are the traditional religions of Western Europe.
Yeah, I mean there is some influence, like the names of the days of the week. And
when we celebrate our holidays, even if they are, under the guise of Christianity, I mean, they're very specific when we celebrate our holidays. They coincide with pagan tradition.
So, I mean, you're not a Christian.
Oh, I am.
I'm not.
He's not. I am.
Okay, I'd make the argument either way, but I'm just making your point. You could debate how much America is founded on European principles, and obviously you had African Americans here from the beginning, Native Americans. You had your conflict of British, French, and Spanish settlers, and
all Western European.
Yeah, those were brother wars.
And and from America from the beginning had Jews. But
there were Jews on the Mayflower?
Well, I mean, there were Jews in America before America was formed. There
were Jews in the Catholic ships that the Spaniards sent over?
Well, there were converts. I'm saying that there were actually Jews.
So Murano.
Yeah, so the two things, whether you're ethnically Jews, so among the Spanish, the first people who came to America, among the Spanish, the number of Jews would have been the highest. And so there's the Jews who were who were faithful Jews, and then the Spartan Jews who had converted to Catholicism. So you have your northern settlements and the French and British settlements, and Jews are coming over part of the French and British also before America. Like I looked at Quebec. Quebec is a Catholic settlement, like in the 1620s. Because JF is in Quebec. I did the research on it. Cardinal Roukloy is the fountainhead of Quebec. You had to be Catholic to be there. There was even a record like a Jewish girl somehow got there and got sent back. And the Jews teamed up with the British, and including there were officers in the British Army that defeated French Quebec in like 1780. Saying that, I mean, the Jews have been part of the American story from the beginning.
And that's my thing. I'm not saying that
you could have your opinion on the JQ, but your historical revisionism is inaccurate. The Jews have been a fundamental part of America since the very beginning.
And that's perfectly fine. I'm not arguing that they weren't. And like I said, I'm not for a completely 100% homogenous European descent. But what I would argue for is that
I even argue a few other points. Like, for example, a lot of the people that came here were fleeing persecution. A lot of the people were indentured. They went to Europe because they were outcast in Europe, and they went through crappy systems where they had to.
In the case of Georgia, they were criminals.
They had to be slaves for like 7 years. Like, I mean, so I'm not sure who your ancestors were.
That's where my ancestors came from. Yeah.
But, I mean, they probably had to be like indentured servants for like 7 years. And then eventually they got their own property after serving for like a British nobility or something. If you're like Richard Spencer and you're actually descended from the British nobility, but most Americans, that's not the case. You had to, our ancestors had to work for 7 years before we got our own property.
My family owned Irish. I'm sorry.
My thing is being both Anglo-Saxon and Irish, and being obviously a melting pot of Western European people. I had people on all sides of that. So, but like I'm not arguing by any means for a completely homogenous white society. What I'm saying is that this is statistically provable that the society functions better when whites have the overwhelming majority.
I had this long debate with Rodney and Norvin, and he's saying, would you rather be upwardly economically mobile in a multicultural society, or downwardly economically mobile in a white homogenous country?
Well, I know the compassion that my people have, so
yeah.
But I'm also educated and and am more than likely going, economically up.
Yeah, I wouldn't have an issue.
I'm saying if you're educated and economically mobile, chances are you're already functioning in a multicultural society. It's almost impossible to be successful in America without being a multiculturalist.
I don't know. The Japanese are doing pretty well.
That's not what I mean. But I'm saying that you have to deal with all types of people in the business world, and saying, yeah, but the Japanese have
100%. And like, I'm not against that. Like I'm not, like I keep saying, but I'm not by any means arguing for a homogenous society. I'm arguing for a majority of European descended people in the country.
Majority, in European.
Now, obviously, you're always going to have Black people. You're always going to have Hispanics. You're always going to have, all these different mixes. That's perfectly fine. But
God
the issue
forbid, I'm not
the issue happens.
I don't want to pick on Polish people.
Now, when we have the massive amount of Hispanics coming in,
let's say factually that the Indians coming to America are smarter, more educated, more hardworking than the British coming to America. And I'm saying, if you're looking from a Republican Trump perspective, I would rather have Indians coming to America than full-blooded Anglos coming to America. And I'm talking about merit-based immigration. And if you're saying that merit-based immigration, that your Anglo is going to beat the Indian, and I'm saying no, merit-based immigration, you're going to have more Indians, more Chinese coming than Anglos.
Bro, we literally had Rory. We had this conversation.
We did have this. Yeah,
that's what Richard Spencer admitted.
We actually had this on our show.
I'm sure it's a common point about right, and that's what Richard Spencer said. That no, he doesn't want these people smarter than us coming over here. But what's going to happen if you don't have these people who are smarter than you coming over here?
But you got to think about brain drain from these other nations. We're destroying these other nations through brain drain.
That's why they don't poo in the loo, man.
Yeah, and you're erasing the culture and the backbone of the way the country was set up, and the people that set up the country and built the country from the ground up. You're erasing those people, and I think that's a.
Well, you're erasing.
Absolutely.
What's more? You're saying your way of life or your prosperity, and you're saying your way of life is more important than your prosperity. And that's why I'm claiming multicultural conservatism.
Well, yes and no, because if I'm
trying to propose a path for you to have both, where you could preserve your way of life.
No, I see what you're saying, but I think that if we as a country stopped babysitting the rest of the world, stopped sending all our money out in financial aid to the rest of the world, we stopped using our military resources to babysit the rest of the world, we could actually invest those into our own populace, and we wouldn't have the issues that you're seeing. So it's a multifaceted issue. It's not a black or white issue. We could definitely have the native population that's currently in the country be a lot higher educated, be a lot more useful and utilitarian if we weren't spending our resources frivolously babysitting the third world.
The saddest part about
how much money do we send to India? How much money do we send to India every year? How much money do Western nations, European white people nations, send to India every year? Why the fuck do you think that they're so educated and that they're at the point they're at? They would literally just be shitting in the streets and living in mud huts if it wasn't for European nations fucking babysitting them, sending them financial aid.
I know. I mean, saying like, I mean, Anglos perpetrated one of the worst crimes in all of humanity against India. In reality, is the wealth of England was largely based off of the plunder and stealing of of the wealth of India. And God forbid if you want to I know some extreme Hindu nationalists.
Hey Rory, do you feel guilty about that?
Not one bit.
Me either. Because guess what? I'm an American. My family was over here when the British Raj happened.
But I'm saying this factually, India is a more important ally to the U.S. than England is today. And that's on a competitive, and even in England,
to convince me to take 1 million Indians in right now.
Well, I'd say that if you want, for your own benefit, because you want people who could fulfill high.
We could have the people here that could fulfill the high function jobs.
I'm saying theoretically, you wish you could.
No, we could. We could if we quit spending our resources babysitting these other nations.
I mean, the worst
we
part
don't spend that much resources.
Right
if you're talking,
go look at the amount.
You're talking the military. You're talking
no, not even the military. I'm talking about straight up financial aid that we send in international aid to nations around the world.
I'm saying like half of the U.S. financial aid goes to Israel. There's only like
exactly. That's another nation we should quit babysitting.
You were saying relative to the budget of like $1 trillion, it's less than 3% that goes to other countries. I think it's even less than that. I mean, we could. It's it's like 1 in the morning. I'm a budget guy. I'm a numbers guy.
Okay, so what I'm saying is
it's not a large part of the budget. If you're talking like the military-industrial complex, we spend 100 times more on that.
100%, and we could definitely
we spend most of our money on.
If you're talking like the 20,000 troops,
we spend most of our money on defending other fucking nations, defending Israel, defending all these other countries.
You don't spend. I mean, but relatively, you don't spend that much money. You think how much money do you think it costs to station all those troops in Saudi Arabia?
Exactly.
In Japan?
It costs a lot of fucking money.
It costs more money than we give to Israel. I'm not just singling out Israel. I'm talking about all of our military aid. That's what President Trump said that either those nations have to start paying us, 100%. Or we're going to stop defending them. But then you have to look at geopolitical strategy, and then what happens if we take all our troops home in South Korea, and there's a destabilized region, and world economic decay, and no one steps up. Like Assad 10 years later is still doing the same thing. No one could get rid of him.
Nobody cares. I don't care.
Yeah, but that's part of the reason of the refugee crisis.
We wouldn't take any refugees. I don't care.
Well, you could try.
You mean we could try? No, because we'd have all our soldiers here defending the fucking border.
You may or may not. I'm saying like I've talked about this at length. I'm saying you could do what Israel is doing, God forbid, and try to kill people who try to cross the border.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean look how well that's working for Israel, though. You're saying really,
yeah,
Trump
but we have oceans in between us, so that's a little different. Israel's in the mix. They're literally landlocked with these fucking people, and they're surrounded by them.
Starting to come around and mentioning, just look, I always give greater force arguments, and there's these greater pressures that are going to cause people to do things really against their own will. So certain, supply and demand in terms of wages. If the global wage is higher in America than other places, supply and demand is going to cause people to try to come here. Some of those people will be willing to risk their life. Some of those people will be willing to wage war for America. You have like 60 million refugees across the world.
60 million refugees? They're all fighting age men. I hardly ever see women and children as refugees.
Yeah.
And there's like 60 million displaced people across the world. Presumably, any one of those people is good chance they're thinking about trying to make it to America.
Okay, well then I go to if you're it's not just defending the borders.
2 billion people.
It's not just defending the borders. If you're caught here, the punishment is severe. Like you're not allowed to be here. You're illegal. The punishment is severe. I'm talking about revamping the entire system.
Like let's use the illegals.
We're talking theoretically where
300.
What are you going to do about it? So you're just like God forbid you know what's happening in Israel. You saw those weekly protests and
they're killing Palestinians.
But that's different because those people can just walk up to the fucking border. Right?
Yes. Well, I mean, then it wasn't.
We have oceans separating us from these people.
You had that, those people coming south, and you had like the masses of thousands of people traveling together to the Mexican border, and you have.
And we would shoot them on sight if it was up to me.
Well, I was saying you might think that, and saying like, how good of an idea is that? That might trigger World War III, and
okay, we would win.
You think you would win? You might.
No, statistically, I've looked at all. I've looked at literally thousands. I've looked at thousands of different freaking layouts for this. They've run algorithms. They've run tests that the U.S. could literally just seize up, pull all their fucking resources back into our border, and we could withstand war for over 100 years, and we would still come out on top. We literally outnumber. We have enough steel. We have enough steel in the fucking ocean in our fucking navy to beat every fucking navy on the planet. We have the resources. We have the weapons. We have everything you would need to.
It's a question: do you have the intelligence and do you have the labor? And
yes.
Saying, like, are white people at this point going to work? You're saying we've been so reliant upon foreign labor for so long. You think that if we close the border, that people are going to go out and work hard?
No, we don't, because you're discounting human innovation. So I think that you look at just like at the end after.
It's funny that Norvin gave the same argument
after the Civil War.
Like, technology.
After the Civil War, we had the same thing.
Low-wage work anymore because
look. After the Civil War, we had the same thing fucking happen. After the Civil War, our fucking budgets were set back to zero. Everybody was broke. We had 500,000 fucking people die. We were set back to zero. Right. And we no longer had this slave labor pool anymore. Guess what happened? We had the Industrial Revolution. That's what happens. You take away this low wage workforce and you create incentive. You create a need for technology to grow. There's an incentive for it to be there. It will happen.
You're saying, but the nature of the current world, technologically, skill wise, is. There's a bigger divergence between the, so to say, the winners and losers, the educated and the uneducated, the poor and the wealthy, the amount of time it takes to develop useful skills, lifelong education. And you're saying you think we're bringing in Indian people for nothing? It's because, we can't fill those jobs, and
we can't fill those jobs at that wage. We can't fill those jobs at that wage.
Yeah, but you can't afford to pay the wage anyways.
No, we could. Oh, we could afford to pay the wage.
You think you could afford? You think you're saying if we I mean, it's a fact that relatively we're screwing Indians. We're treating them unfairly. We're paying them on average $15,000 less for the same work, and we use visas to lord it over them. That they come in here, they get their job, and it's like, oh, that's a lot of money for an Indian. That's way more money than you would make in India. But at the same time, they're getting paid $15,000 a year less on average than the American that they're working next to, and their visa status is held over them. That like, oh, you better behave, you better not cause any problems, or you get deported. And it's saying really that's more morally and unethically is not nice, and that's why even the Trump administration. Relatively, the most likely people to get visas from the Trump administration is the Indians. But you're saying okay, we don't need them, and then all of a sudden we're going to find Americans. We're going to pay them Where are you going to get the money to pay the people $15,000 a year more than the Indian people who are getting paid?
But that's the thing is that 85% of jobs that are currently in effect are absolutely useless. Right. So once you eliminate not
the jobs that Indians are fulfilling.
They're literally doing basic software fucking tech. It's literally useless shit. Like they're not actually developing technologies that are, picking fruit faster. They're not providing fucking food to people. They're not providing sustenance. They're not, these are
a patch for Tinder.
Yeah, exactly. So they're useless fucking jobs.
I'm saying those are relatively some of the most, the IT systems, the computer systems are needed for the companies to operate.
That's what I do for a living. Like I work in IT and I do freaking IT services for multiple freaking companies.
You work with Indians and Irish people?
No, because they hire me instead.
And you get paid $15,000 more than the Indian person.
I get paid way more than $15,000 more than that Indian person. But I
mean, my sister's in IT and saying that they're not outsourcing it.
Like I work for myself, so like I cut out all the middlemen, so I make way more than the mid-level Indian guy.
But I mean, really, they outsource that stuff to India. There's millions of Indians in America on temporary visas doing those jobs in every major city.
Yeah, but what I'm saying though is that if we're talking about those, a lot of those jobs are really useless. They really are. They think they're needed, but they're really not. That the thing is that Indians, if you
I know that I'm saying I know
if you actually worked in IT, you would know that Indians do the worst fucking Indians do the worst fucking coding. They literally
maintain the systems. They
literally do the worst coding.
They maintain the systems from their laptop, and they have a lot of spare time.
They do the worst coding. You always have to go back in and redo their work again. They literally do the worst fucking job. But if you get 100 of them for the fucking, half the price that you could get freaking, 10 actual fucking proper people for, eventually you'll get to the right answer. That's the way that these companies work. So
you think, I mean, two things. You're saying, I mean, you're really a believer in the white people. So you think that if the 2 million Indian people in America right now went back to India, that 2 million white people would be able to
you would need less than 500,000 white people to fill those jobs. Yeah.
And are they there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're there. Fuck yeah, they're there. I know so many people that work in IT, that work in freaking coding, that could do those jobs, but these companies would rather hire 5 Indians to eventually, like, it's like the old saying of, you put enough freaking monkeys in a room with typewriters, they come out with Shakespeare. That these companies, they look at, oh well, I can hire 5 Indians rather than this one native, and eventually they'll get to the right answer. that's how they do it. But if we were to open up those vacancies, then
I was in University of Michigan engineering, and I was outcompeted by Chinese and Indian people. I'm saying you might be right that a lot of these people that went to school in India, but saying even in the universities itself, if you went to Harvard, if you went to any of the good schools, University of Michigan.
I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have.
Those Indians and Chinese people weren't putting out second-rate work. Those people were the top in their classes.
But that is
in American universities.
That's a small percentage.
Compared, you're saying, I mean, most of the people that they're bringing over are educated in the mass universities in India.
Yeah, which are garbage. That's what I'm saying. No, I'm not like I've always said, I'm not saying we should have a 100% homogenous white society, right? There's always room for a small percentage of people from all freaking ethnicities and all places.
Well, I was saying, why not just make it 100% merit-based? Why should you have an advantage being white as opposed to just making it merit-based? And if you can't compete,
because my people made this country.
Exactly. Just think about if you were to say the same thing.
I mean, you're going to come
to the same thing about Japan.
Argument.
If you were to say the same thing about Israel, well, guess what? We got these 40 million ex people from wherever that are going to do a better job than you Israelis. We're going to come take over your country. Do you think that Israel would be fine with that?
Well, so Israel, we have to fight for it. We have mandatory military service, and saying, yeah, right now, there are Jews doing what you're just claiming that you would do. There are Jews right now on the border pulling the trigger. You're just claiming you would do that.
No, I would do it. I've done it. I served, so I have no problem pulling the trigger on somebody who's invading my country. But
it's okay. But you're relatively. You mean you haven't done that here in America? That's not what we do in Israel. That's already what we're doing. And it's okay. You're a warrior. You're willing to fight for your country, and then you look at it from military strategy, intelligence. Are you actually correct? Would you actually win? Could you fill the ranks? And you're saying, what's the likelihood? From pure military intelligence strategy, what's the likelihood that you're going to have to be on that border? Pulling the trigger.
Oh, you dedefinitely would. You definitely would. When you have
drawback in international politics going to come.
Are you going
to have other countries that are going to start sanctioning the U.S. what about nuclear destabilization? What if what if Russia sells? What if
so
Russia
European nations? So all European nations should just open their borders to whoever because it'll destabilize the global economy.
Well,
But you wouldn't say
I'm not proposing a solution by saying you have to think through. It's like the Cuban Missile Crisis or something like that happens, where what's going to stop Russia from giving selling Mexico a nuclear bomb. And you're saying, is your idea legitimately feasible? Are you just talking nonsense?
It's definitely feasible because we ran this nation this way until 1965, and we had no fucking problem with it.
And then you're working through the logistics problem.
How many times were you on the brink of war during the Cold War?
Please allow me to make my point, please. Please, may I speak? Thank you. You're working through this as a logistics problem. We already have the infrastructure in place to solve the logistics, right? You're asking questions like, how are you going to have the manpower? When I turned 18, I had to sign up for the conscription.
Yep.
You're a vast
every 18-year-old male in this nation had to sign up for conscription.
Yep. Every person in the U.S., every U.S. citizen.
Yes, I'm saying you would support America becoming like Israel and having mandatory military service.
Oh yeah, for sure, I would.
You think your fellow whites would go along with that?
Yeah, of course they would. They wouldn't have a choice.
Really wouldn't have a choice, right?
It's mandatory.
Right now, what percentage of the people do national service? Like 1%, 2%?
Yeah, but you think about the same thing with when we had World War II, right? You had the same thing. You had the draft, and people were, even without the draft, people were volunteering. When your country's under invasion, people sign up and they do what needs to be done. Dude, I've served, so I know, I know the military mindset. I've known, hundreds of thousands of fucking people that are fucking vets, and they would very willingly go to the border and defend our country from fucking invasion.
Yeah, but what percentage? So you're talking about switching from 2% of America serving to 100% of America serving.
It wouldn't take 100% of the American population, Doovid. There are plenty of vets, plenty of older vets who would be happy to stand at the border with guns and shoot the Mexicans trying to come in.
I like this guy, Norvin. Hey, how you doing, Norvin?
Hey.
Nice to meet you, brother.
Okay.
Good to meet you.
Me and Norvin.
You got to come on our show, dude.
Yeah, I like this guy already. He made one comment, and he's my one of my best friends already. I like this guy.
I was saying you guys are veterans. You might like what Norvin's saying, but like, Norvin, are you going to serve, Norvin?
I'd be happy to stand on the border with a gun.
Hell yeah.
But if you did, how come you would have done it already? Like, you're in your early 20s. You're saying if you were going to list, you probably would have done it already.
The military won't take me because of my heart condition. But I'd be happy, like, if we had like a militia situation where they were like, the government was like, hey, civilians come stand on the border with a gun, I would do it.
I already argued this at length with Norvin, and we could see the direction. Like, obviously, these are major issues, and I know here in Metro, I live in a mostly African American area. Like, the urban areas are already minority white. There's almost no chance that's going to change.
And how's the infrastructure, by the way?
Yeah, how nice is that?
I mean, here in Detroit, it's falling apart because of population decline.
Yeah,
and
due to white flight.
Well, that and it's full of blacks that just destroy everything.
Well, exactly. I grew up after the white flight, so I'm saying, like,
isn't it true that on New Year's Eve they just burn buildings down?
No, it's not that bad, but it's like I only have vague memories of white people when I was a little kid.
But why is it that when you have this area full of African Americans that they're not building up new infrastructure?
Well, I mean, I live in an upper class African American place, like, relatively, like, our roads are being done right now. I mean, I look out a window, the roads are closed, there's construction going on. But like, relatively, I live in one of the nicer African American neighborhoods in this area, as opposed to like large portions of Detroit where the infrastructure is not being kept up.
Well, what about other cities like?
You can't argue general demographics, but I'm saying from a factual point, the cities are already multicultural, and the fact is, like,
which is why they're declined.
I'm looking on Facebook. I'm seeing videos of my friends and colleagues getting arrested, camping out in front of ICE, shutting it down. Like I'm saying, that's what I'm getting on Facebook from my Jewish colleagues or people I know here in the city. And it's like, shut ICE down. and they got camp cities. People are getting arrested.
Yeah, that's a huge minority. That's a minority of the populace. The vast majority of Americans are.
That's happening in every major city. I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand that, but that's a lot.
Especially white Americans want to build a wall and deport them all.
Exactly. That's a loud minority of uppity fucking lefties in the city that come from these upper class areas that have never actually.
The Supreme Court just upheld. So I'm saying, I'm going to submit to the facts, and saying the Supreme Court just upheld the travel ban. I know that here, say we in general, like the Jewish community, the Multicultural Society, we fought that for over a year. We were fighting Trump's travel ban, and it looks like he only got partially what he wanted. After a year, and even that we're still fighting it. In the elections, 2018 are coming right up, and Kennedy retiring, and it might get that other seat. It might make a difference, but the elections are right around the corner, and it's unclear how the battle on this is going to go. And I'm saying, so
you're fine with us, bringing in Muslims from known terrorist countries?
I'm apolitical. I'm just analyzing this, saying.
Well, you're saying that you guys were fighting the travel ban. So I'm just.
Well, I'm saying I'm in the blue state areas. I'm kind of using.
He's also saying as a Jew.
Right. Yeah. I'm saying the we.
That's
what the people around me, the people I grew up with, the people I know. That's what we're doing, and I'm more apolitical. Just analyzing and talking about it, but I'm saying, that's what's happening.
No, let me ask you though, like a direct question though. Do you, your individual self, do you support importing Muslims from known terrorist countries? By the way, that list was created by Obama, so it's like
I'm apolitical, so I know there's a Jewish woman in the district near me running as a Republican, and she's full in line with everything that you're saying. She's talking all the Trump macro.
That wasn't the question, David.
That's not the question. I'm asking you directly. Do you support importing Muslims without extreme vetting from known terrorist nations?
I'm not political, so I'm saying my opinion doesn't matter. I'm not active.
Well, but your opinion matters to me.
Question.
Your opinion matters to me, especially being a Jew, knowing how Muslims feel about Jews, and especially from freaking extreme terrorist nations. I figured you would have an opinion on that, and that would be.
I'm not sure if you saw. I went over the ADL statistics that showed that the Muslims have the highest, even in America, disproportionately high. Generally, I would go with theological principles. I would like to be merciful to people. But I'm not active in politics. To me, I'm apolitical.
It's not a political question. It's a survival question of you as a person. Do you think that they are a danger to you?
I think I would be more likely to follow my ideals, even to
your own detriment.
To my own detriment. I'm more a theological believer. But on this, I'm apolitical. I'm talking in a collective we, because I know what's happening on the ground. So
you won't answer the question.
Well, I was saying
So, David, why did you support Trump? Because you tried to make the first time I spoke to you, you tried to make a big deal about how you supported Trump so much. So was that just a Zionist thing? Did you just support Trump for Israel?
To me, it was a change in the guard. I didn't vote, and I actually knew people who knew Trump. I was in New York, and so supporting Trump was kind of beneficial because we have someone that you're close to in office is good for business.
Because Trump freaking has cucked out to Israel, so that's he's going to support your people. Trump's fine. It's fine for. So what you're saying? So at the end of the day, it's fine for you to do what's best for Jewish people. Hold on, it's fine for you to do what's best for Jewish people, but when white people, Europeans, try to do the same thing, you want to argue that that's a bad thing.
No, I'm not arguing that at all.
It's all you ever argue, David.
That's all we've had this whole conversation.
It's always a position that leads us to a world without any white people.
Yeah, but I'm talking ideas. I'm not telling you people what to do. I'm talking ideas with you. That's why I'm having
David,
conversation.
David,
I'm telling you what to do. I'm talking to you my ideas. I'm talking you as a person on the ground in the blue state area. And my opinions about America. I'm not telling you.
Okay, so David, you said that when you have a plurality, that's the best situation, right? So let's say that we have a country where, 20% are African American, 20% are white European, 20% are Jewish, and 20% are, Hispanic.
Jews are never. I mean, that's the one thing. Jews are never going to be a demographic threat. Jews are 2%. You're saying because Jews are small people.
Just for a complete hypothetical. Yeah.
But I say, Jews aren't going to be 20%. We might be.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Jews being a majority in any country besides.
You might have your opinions on the JQ, but no one's worried about the Jews.
No, I'm not. I'm not worried about the Jews at all. But I'm just giving you this hypothetical.
So even Norvin, who was worried about the Jews, he's not worried about us as a demographic threat.
Okay, so whatever it may be,
you're not worried that we're going to be a demographic threat to you, are you? Are you, Norvin?
No, you're not a demographic threat.
About
an existential threat.
Yeah, existential threat, not a demographic threat.
Okay, so instead of just changing the words or saying things that detract from my hypothetical, okay, allow me to set up the hypothetical first, okay. So we have a complete multicultural society where everybody is, an equal percentage of the whole pie. Okay. So sub-Saharan Africans, came into America, and so everything balances out. Is this society the perfect society in your mind? Because every demographic is equal in this plurality.
Well, I'm going to go biblical and idealistic on the perfect society.
No, just yes or no. It's a yes or no.
Well, I'm saying because it's an unfair yes or no question, but I think in general a multicultural society.
Because I already know that what you said earlier in this discussion, you said that the plurality is what's safest for minorities. But that presupposes the idea that all minorities and all peoples across the planet act the same. And with the
plurality is what's best for Jews, and that's what he doesn't want to say. He supports what's best for Jews.
I was opening saying I'm willing to discuss
No, just stop.
What's best for Jews, and it's separate for America. And you mentioned, I made the point of driving in. Multiculturalism is not the same as having one dominant people. Into reality, multiculturalism hasn't really existed.
That's what we're going with, Doovid. Right?
Multiculturalism hasn't worked out for America. It hasn't worked out for any nation that's ever had
multiculturalism here. I'm saying we have it to some extent, but I'm saying we have a white.
Okay, so everybody.
Yeah, and as that multiculturalism. Go ahead.
So
we would have multiculturalism if we had like 20 million Indians and 20 million Chinese and 20 million Filipinos.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying.
The Asians are already 30% of the population.
That's what I'm saying. Every population is equal. Every demographic is equal and accounted for, except for the Jews because they're only 2%, right? And they're never going to be more above 2%. So, right, everybody's equal. But
everyone. I mean, it's obviously the percentage is not going to be the exact same percent.
Nobody's talking.
Hold on, let him finish his point.
So that idea presupposes that every population acts with the same level of decorum. All right?
No, I'm saying that you have a system.
It does, because what you don't understand is that sub-Saharan Africans are going to kill, rob, and do nothing to add to the society as a whole, because that's what you see in their countries right now.
And that's what you see everywhere they go.
I support law and order. So I mean, they
don't respect law and order. They don't. Yeah. That's why you have one farmer being murdered in South Africa every day.
That's why you have Detroit. That's why you have Chicago. That's why you have Baltimore.
Well, I say I live in a largely the neighborhood.
Yeah, you live in a city that has one of the highest crime rates in the country because it's full of African Americans.
400 murders a year.
The suburb that I live in, that is majority African.
Yeah, the one small demographic of people
has a low crime rate, and the motto of my area, the subdivision I live in, is "We snitch." In terms of the police come, it's majority African American.
Yeah,
but
I would bet $1 million.
Standing on the sidewalk, they call the cops, and the cops come right away. But that's in my area. And
I will bet $1 million, David, right now, that says the vast majority of African Americans that live in your suburb have a high percentage of European DNA.
I doubt it. I'm saying most of them.
Well, we know on average
came from the South.
Black Americans
On average, African Americans have like a 25%. So I'm saying the ones that you live with probably have a higher percentage, and that's why they have European
the African Americans that made it to the upper middle class. You know, a lot of them came from the South or came from Detroit. I'd highly doubt that. I mean, I'd give more like because they worked hard, because they got ahead.
Because they have European DNA. Because they don't have an 80%. They don't have an 80 average IQ.
I don't really buy that. I mean, I would.
What do you mean you don't buy
I couldn't
it?
even have speculated
It's
that was what. You're telling me the facts of my neighborhood. You're telling my neighborhoods have a higher.
Well, dude, but I can pretty much guarantee if the blacks around you are as smart as you say, they have to be like more like quadroons or
exactly.
mulattoes.
I think they're just the ones that got ahead. And they could afford.
Yeah, which are the ones who have a higher European freaking
You can
DNA.
look at all like successful African Americans. They all are lighter and more European features. I mean, they're like off whites.
I mean, our last president, right? Our first black president was 50% white.
Yeah, but I went to my last homeowners meeting. I don't think those people had more. Were more mixed blooded than the people in Detroit. I mean, I think they might be higher IQ. You know, if you believe in looking at intelligence that way, they're harder working, more successful, more stable. But like your argument, like about the likelihood of their genetics, I highly doubt. Although I've never seen a study, but just from my homeowners meeting, like they didn't look lighter than the people in Detroit.
Have you not read the bell curve?
I guarantee you they have lighter skin than sub-Saharan Africans.
Yeah, pure sub-Saharan Africans.
I don't think so. I'm saying like I'm saying the accountant of.
Do you even know what sub-Saharan Africans actually look like? I mean, immediately, phenotypically, you can distinguish them from Black Americans. They are almost a separate race. They are so
I'm saying I know. I go to my homeowners meeting, and the accountant of our homeowner association is extremely dark skinned, and he's a very astute investor. He's good with money. He's very trustworthy. And it's saying like, no, I mean, that guy does not, I'm not picturing that guy as having European blood. He seems as black as any African.
So but you're talking about an outlier.
Yeah, a total outlier.
Well, I'm saying in my whole neighborhood might be outliers, but I don't think they're outliers because they're genetic static. I think they're outliers because but most of them came from Detroit or came from the South.
Okay, but you're saying they are outliers to the general populace.
They weren't. I was, so to say, born into the upper middle class. Most of my neighbors weren't born into the upper middle class. They rose to the upper middle class from.
Well, they also get leg ups from all like the diversity program handouts.
Yeah,
that may or may not be the case, but like I highly doubt that it's because.
So, but look at the rest of your city, though, right? So you're talking about you were talking about nothing but the outliers of this massive city that's going.
And I'm saying my area in Metro Detroit has extremely good law and order, better than a lot of white areas. I mean, my parents, God forbid, they moved out of here and their house got broken into, before they finished moving in. In supposedly a better neighborhood, crime and the police are better in this neighborhood than a lot of white suburban areas. And you can say, okay, it's an exception, it's an outlier, but to me, it's proof that law and order works.
Well, the richest black neighborhood in the country has higher crime rates than the poorest white neighborhood in this country. That's a fact.
Yep,
that's a fact. That is provable fact.
And if law and order works
I don't know the neighborhoods, but I mean, I
that's provable fact. That is absolutely 100% provable.
And David, if
you'd have
law
to
and order works so well for everybody across the spectrum.
So obviously, I was arguing with because JF wanted to give the murder mystery example in the evolution debate, and obviously Detroit is like murder capital of the world.
Exactly.
And
why is that?
Most of those go unsolved.
Why is that though?
It was multiple reasons, and saying if you want to purely blame it on
full of blacks,
I saying you want to purely give the racial reason, you can, but then saying in my suburb, of 100,000 people that's over 50% African American.
I live in one of the poorest states and one of the poorest counties, but we have one of the highest proportions of white populace in the country, and we also have one of the lowest crime rates. So that's, the statistics bore out that the more black people you have in an area, the higher the crime rates go up.
I meant that, that's why
that's something I've looked into very deeply. So we can go after
you guys are military. I
can provide you with the links.
I'm not an expert in crime statistics, but I know my neighborhood, I know my homeowners association.
Exactly, because that's the outliers. Obviously, there's always outliers, and if as a population grows, you're going to have more outliers, right? And they're all going to come together because they don't want to be around these high crime population areas, right? But that doesn't disprove the point by any means.
Generally, you find that African Americans in neighborhoods like mine are actually more tough on crime than whites.
Well, because they come from high crime areas, for sure.
Yeah, they escaped Detroit. And they have no mercy. That's why I said in the neighborhood motto where I live is.
But give it a generation or two. It's the same thing with Muslims.
They said if you see someone standing outside, on the sidewalk that you don't recognize for more than a few seconds, call the cops.
But it's the same thing with Muslims. Yeah, the first generation that comes over here, that comes out of the shitty Muslim country they came from, and actually understands the strife and what Islam causes. They're very law abiding. They're very freaking upstanding. They make good citizens. But it's that second generation who's raised in Islam, but doesn't understand where they came from because they never experienced it, that are the most dangerous. That's where all your fucking American Muslim terrorists come from. It's the same thing.
It's usually second generation.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying with second generation. It's the same thing. So you have these people in your neighborhood that they came from these lower class. They came from these people. They came from these from these tougher areas. So yeah, they're going to be tougher. But when their kids are born and their grandkids are born, and they're listening to fucking hip hop, they're listening to rap talking about fuck the police and sell drugs and fuck bitches,
and come straight from the underground.
And then they're going to go back out into the world. They're going to be just as bad because their culture is fucked. Their culture is fucking fucked.
Education.
The regression to the mean is also a phenomenon.
Unfortunately, education is a problem in our neighborhood, but specifically in my subdivision, we have college scholarships, and a lot of people are sending their kids to university, and they're finishing school. And I reject racism. I think that blacks have just as much potential as anybody else.
Statistically, that's inaccurate.
Right,
that's provably false, David. What you just said is provably false.
Provably.
Well, I would argue.
Well, my thing is this: my
division is more theological, and it's
so even being theological. I believe in the soul. My thing is, I started out from a point of not wanting these things to be true, right? So I don't start out from a principle of, oh, well, all black people are bad, blah 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 blah, right? I don't start out from that position,
and I don't. Do you believe in the soul?
And I don't want those things to be bad.
Debate I had with JF tonight, and saying I believe in the soul. I believe the source of intelligence is God.
Okay, well then, if you believe in biblical, then you understand that those people are different. What about the curse of Cain? What about those other things? Like these people are cursed by God. Yeah, there you go.
I don't buy that. I'm saying I know the history. Unfortunately, I know in Israel, and people said that, and you're saying that biologically that the people, we know who those people are, or that even generally curses, negative curses could be lifted. That your Pharisee understandings of prophecy, that only positive prophecies are guaranteed to happen if we repent. Negative prophecies don't have to be implemented. But yeah, I would fundamentally reject that.
But David, how do you account for the fact that the Australian Aboriginal has an average IQ of 62, and the Kalahari Bushman has an average IQ of 54?
Yeah, which is functionally retarded.
South Africa has an average IQ of 71.
Yeah.
If to go to our topic tonight, what's the source of intelligence? Is it the soul, or is it the material?
It's the brain, David. We all know it's the brain. It
so
can be
even no. Let's for the sake of argument. For the sake of argument. Let's say that it is a soul. So why do they have these lower intelligences?
And David, I think
I want to hold on, Kaiser. Hold on. I want an answer to this before we get distracted.
Well, I'm saying because there's an expression to the soul. I'm saying like the soul is like the carriage driver, and the body's the horse, and the and the soul is the
what makes the Kalahari Bushmen have such low IQs?
Because they're not educated, they're not trained in intellectual endeavors.
But they're not capable of doing it.
So hold on,
certain things,
hold on. If your soul is the source of the logical thought, why would you need education to make that logical thought function?
Well, I mean, because you need a vehicle to express it.
But the vehicle, okay. But
I'm saying the source of intelligence.
So you're saying that, okay? So I just want to
So this is the difference between a Chevy Beater and a Ferrari.
So you're saying that.
I'm saying like you could have a junky computer and a high quality computer, and they're both connected to a high powered processor like mainframe, and you're saying that's like God, so to say. That you could have someone in a situation, from the bushes, but we're both equally connected to the same God.
Okay, so even if that is accurate,
providing you intelligence, them intelligence.
Okay, for the sake of argument, I will concede that. Right? Let's just for the sake of getting to I want to really flesh this out a little bit. Just for the sake of argument, let's say that that's true. Okay. So that means that their vehicle, their body, their brain that they have is incapable of reaching the levels by which we have.
No, because I'm saying that the intelligence has nothing to do with the brain. It has to do with the
so exactly
immaterial soul.
Okay, so you're saying
it's expressed in the material. So I mean, there are environmental effects on how the soul is expressed. But yes, it means that a person could change. It means that you could be dumb and your IQ could increase. So it's not like you were born with an 80 IQ.
There is no data to support that, dude.
There's literally no data to support that. But hold on, for the sake of argument,
IQ and die with 120 IQ. You could be born with 120 IQ and die with 80 IQ.
That's not true. So so you're telling me that you could take an Aboriginal, 100% bloodline Aboriginal from Australia, and you could, through education, get them to 160 IQ.
I don't know about the detail. I mean, you're talking like Pygmalion experiments, and you're saying, yes, I do believe in your Pygmalion experience. That they do work, whether it's a white person, Aboriginal, or anybody. You could take person in and you could clean them up and give them the benefit of a situation.
The Michigan twin studies would beg to differ.
Yeah, all studies would beg to differ. You cannot take an Australian Aboriginal and get them to 160 IQ. Every single study that's ever been done proves that to be different. I personally, from every IQ test I've ever done, I'm between 160 and 170. You could never get an Aboriginal to reach my IQ level. It's just not possible.
Well, I mean, to reach, I'm saying, okay, 160, 170 is pretty high on the spectrum. But
why wouldn't they be possible if they're connected to the same mainframe? We're all the same, right? You're saying that we're all the same. There's no difference between people, and we're all connected to the same mainframe. We all have the same function. You're saying that with education, we could get them to be anybody, right?
Yeah, because I believe in a God that listens to prayers and answers prayers.
Okay, so you're telling me we can take
I'm not giving a 100%
bloodline.
I'm giving a theological answer, and yes.
But even if it's theological, however you want to answer it.
Prayers and answers prayers, and yes, it is possible.
However you want to answer it. But you're telling me you could get a Aboriginal from Australia to reach my IQ level. Is that what you're saying?
IQ is a questionable thing. What it means, and saying like IQ meaning
that's false, David. IQ is one of the most well understood concepts in psychology.
No, I mean, but you have your 7 types of IQ. If you're just talking like an old like Warshire, whatever your straight IQ test where you're giving a bunch of spatial pattern recognitions or
okay, so that's Raven's recognition. You've also got the Stanford Binet. You have the Wechsler's adult test. I mean, there's a whole bunch, but
Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner's famous,
but they're all very good, David, at figuring out IQ. They're all excellent for finding G, which is the largest indicator of success.
I would say two things. I mean, different nations and different people have different skills. I understand, like Aboriginals, I think, have very good eyesight, long distance eyesight.
Exactly. So even if you plucked an Aboriginal from birth, no life experience, literally out of the womb, right? So let's take life experience out of the fucking equation. If you pluck them from birth, out of the womb, and you put them in the optimal scenario, could you ever get them to reach 160, 170 IQ? He's half European.
Yeah, but you're saying something like President Obama, and yeah, I do believe there's
all studies would prove that that's incapable.
Yeah, I mean, like Krishnamurti, from the Theosophy Society, the poor country Indian boy that became the great world teacher, Krishnamurti. I mean, there's multiple examples of.
That's fine, but those are not what we're talking about. Those are not people that come from the lower diaspora. Like, you're talking about people that come from an average of, they can still, they're very capable. There's still going to be outliers that are capable of reaching these levels. But I'm talking about someone from the lowest rungs. Your Kalahari Bushman.
Lowest of the low.
Yeah, your Kalahari Bushman. Your Australian Aboriginal. These people that on average have the lowest IQs on the planet.
Arguably proto-human.
Yeah. Could you take someone like that?
Well, I mean, you're talking you saw the My Fair Lady that's based on the.
Yes, Pygmalion.
Pygmalion. So you're saying you reject Pygmalion projects always fail?
No, I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that you can
a certain level. You could take a poor. You could
100% take people from
a white from a rural area and put them in an elite urban private school. In that case, you believe the Pygmalion experiment would work, but if it was a Native American
because you're comparing
from the reservation,
not apples to oranges.
You think a Native American from a reservation that's brought up speaking a different language. I mean, there's a certain language barrier. So
I'm talking about picking them from the womb where they don't have the language barrier, right? So I'm talking about removing all social constructs. Because they're being plucked from the womb.
My world.
So all social constructs go out the window.
If you want like scientific evidence, or you want to say studies, has there been cases where it's happened? I'm sure I could find cases demonstrated where it has happened. Scientifically, if it's possible.
You can never find an Australian Aboriginal that reached a 160, 170.
I don't know too much. I mean, you're talking Australian.
Like it's not going to happen. They don't have the brain volume for it. It's not possible.
But you're saying you're not going to find like an Aztec or like a Native American.
They'll be able to reach decent IQs, over their average because through education, I definitely 100% agree that education can lift people up. I'm not disagreeing with that point, right? But I'm saying there are certain groups of people, and this goes for most groups of people where there's a ceiling where you're incapable of reaching certain levels. And as you go into other groups,
that's why the debate tonight was important, because there's no evidence as of now of a working understanding system for the brain producing intelligence. So you might be basing.
There is, David.
Yeah, there is.
There's not a theory for how the brain produces thought.
David, do you understand that? What is it? With now MRI, they can predict IQ. What is the ratio? I can't remember to what degree, but
white matter to gray matter.
What?
Yeah.
There's not a working theory for how thought is produced. You have indirect.
Okay, so David, I think you and I can both find some level of agreement here, right? Because I am a Christian, I do believe in the concept of the soul. All right. So the soul is responsible for the thought. The body is the machine that manifests the idea, the thought, right? So the difference is the machine that manifests the thought, correct? So, for example, my European brain is larger. It's a larger engine. So when my soul gives the thought, I can see much clearer what my soul is trying to say with my larger engine than, say, I've got a V12 engine in my head. An Aboriginal has an inline 4.
Yeah, he's driving a jalopy.
You're saying that you're talking like cranial old. You're actually saying you've studied brain sizes and that's conclusive, or
yeah, that is 100% conclusive.
Aboriginals, phrenology or something.
IQ.
Like you have like phrenology handbooks.
I'm not talking about phrenology at all.
You even alluded to this, where Aboriginals have better eyesight, things like that. It's the same thing within, like owls. Owls have amazing eyesight, but they've given up on brain volume to get that eyesight. Right? It's the same thing within humans. You've sacrificed certain brain volume for other functions. It's part of the evolutionary process. So as we're isolated,
that thought arises from the brain. So if we're at a standstill, in my
but you're saying the brain is the vehicle. So I'm actually
the brain is the vehicle for motor controls, not the vehicle for so language, for moving the mouth and the airwaves to produce language, or for controlling the body, for vision, and for some respects of memory. But in terms of thought, I'm not willing to budge yet.
But you keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah,
you don't even
exactly.
have a position.
So why we're at a standstill, because I don't look. My belief system doesn't
like you can literally MRI
from the brain, so it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me.
You can watch the brain
be more intelligent.
You can watch different neurons fire as you have different thought processes. We've gotten to the point now where you can.
I'm not saying
we can scan the brain. We can scan the brain. Hold on.
Reaction to stimulus. You're not talking about thought process. You're talking neurons firing due to the reaction of external
preponderance of the evidence, David.
Yeah, there is no evidence. There is no evidence that they're reacting to external stimuli.
Of course, they are acting to external stimuli. I'm saying I told Jeff I had those tests done on me where they put the electrodes on my head and they showed me pictures or showed me different words, and they were reading the scans or following my eye movement.
They show you pictures of naked ladies?
No, they didn't. But I mean, it's possible they have studies like that. But I mean, those are the type studies that they conducted, and they had different colors or different words or different pictures, and they measured my I wasn't an MRI. That was send the electromagnetic
brainwave function, where they can actually give you the God thought process.
But I'm saying even if it was in an MRI, it would be reaction to internal. They don't put you in MRI and say like, when they say like to solve like complicated calculus problems, and they put on the MRI.
Yeah. So
you're saying that's the test that you're saying that they done. I'm saying and even that's a reaction to a stimulus, because how do you give over what you want the person to do? You have to have the person use the speech function. Which are all
brain.
Yeah, those are all biological functions. You're inputting the data from a biological input from your auditory function.
Yeah, so that's why you're saying the evidence is clear that the brain controls motor. It controls your sense perception like that. So it's lighting up due to sense perception, not to thought.
Hey, Rory, I'm going to do something that I said I would never do. I'm going to pour myself a drink.
Oh man! All right, Kaiser's poured a drink. I've already had like 10 tonight. So
alcohol.
Yeah, at the very beginning, I promised I would never drink and stream, but David, you got me.
I always drink and stream. That's the only time I do drink. The only time I drink is
your guys' first time dealing with David.
Yes.
He's always like this.
Yeah, it's fine. I love it, dude. It's a great conversation.
Yeah,
I'm not
on our show, man.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't allow things to like upset me. Like I don't get frustrated. Like
Except
it's
for that time we were talking to the Kangs.
that is true. That what time I was talking to those black nationalists, that was very frustrating. I enjoy it. Like I enjoy conversations that and I think that Duvin has had some good points that make me kind of expand upon my own thought process, and I enjoy that. That's what it's all about, the conversation. Expanding on your own thought process.
Yeah, so if you're set on the racial science, we're just going to hit a standstill. And that was my point tonight, to demonstrate that.
But I think that everything that I've said could be factually backed up in reality.
Intelligence arising from the brain or from some spiritual essence, and if it arises from some spiritual essence, what's the likelihood that?
So why do you see this disparity between different groups of intellect? That's my main question. I think that's where we kind of got off topic. Is so if we all have a soul and we all have the same connection to this this spiritual thought, or this connection to this, just for the sake of argument, we'll say spiritual mainframe, just to give it a a name and a topic, this connection to God. We're all children of God. We're all created in His image. Why do we have this disparity between the races and different groups of genetics? Like genetics is a straight breakdown of the disparity that we see.
Yeah, I mean, for certain current tests, and saying whether that could change in a person's lifetime or over.
But we've seen that over time. Historically, that's accurate. Historically, Africans before Europeans came never built a structure over 1 story tall, and it was never built out of stone. They never built a seaworthy ship. They never created a functional society. So this is historically accurate over thousands of years. So this isn't modern. This is provable over time in history.
Well, I had this argument with Norman. I mean, that's you're going to differentiate between North Africans, the Egyptians.
Egyptians were from a completely different diaspora. They were not.
They were Levantine.
Yeah, they were Levantine. So that's a completely different group of people. So we're talking about sub-Saharan Africans. Why did they not create those things?
I'm not. I can't answer that question. I'm saying that I'm not going to be able to answer that question.
So, but then those same disparities continue to this day. So it's not, the reason I bring that up is because you're saying that these IQ tests,
it could be,
they had access to all the same resources. Sub-Saharan African is one of the most resource richest places on the planet.
It could be climatic or geographic also.
We're all from that same place. So all of our diaspora originally comes from that place. And it was until we came out of that place and we bred with Neanderthals, other hominids.
That's not my understanding of human history. But either way, saying, yeah, I mean, if people lived in cold climates, obviously they needed to focus more on building structures.
They needed to sell the ocean.
People who lived in warm climates, had a lesser need for structures, and people
exactly. So they didn't adapt to develop the intelligence.
Yeah,
it's not intelligence. I'm saying intelligence is just.
Well, what I'm saying, it comes to today where it is intelligence. We can show that intelligence is a factor.
David, I love you.
We can show today that intelligence is a factor.
I mean, I've been listening to Jared Taylor mentioning these arguments. You're saying that it was geographical, climatic.
Yes, but the geography affects the genetics. If there's nothing in the environment to select for intelligence, intelligence won't develop. Do you know what cold winters theory is?
I'm saying people are resilient.
Do you know what cold winters theory is?
Yeah, I think that's basically what I'm saying. That the Europeans had cold winters. So
yes.
So we genetically selection for intelligence.
Exactly. So natural selection over generations.
There's different measures of intelligence, and you're saying for maybe long-term planning, and long-term planning isn't necessarily the your seven forms of intelligence.
All right, so let me put it to you like this, David.
Maybe for long-term planning.
All right, so we look at the animal kingdom, and we have species that arise that are specialists, and then we have species that arise that are generalists, right? So, for example, the penguin is great in Antarctica. It's a specialist, right? But if we took the specialist and moved it to a warm climate, it would not do so well. Now, the sparrow exists from Mexico all the way into Canada. This is a generalist. This species doesn't mind temperature. It's suited to handle itself in a variety of climates. All right. So now let's look at how this applies to human biodiversity. The African is a specialist. They are especially good at living in hot, sun-exposed climates that are resource-rich in terms of game and plant food, right? Then we look at Europeans and Middle East, the Caucasoids, right? We look at Caucasoids. These are their generalists. These are people that are adaptive. They continue to innovate and create and adapt to the situation as they arise. And then we look towards the East. We look at the Asians. These people are also specialists. However, they're specialists in the way that they function with each other in a society. This is why Chinese, Japanese, all of these Asian societies work so well as a collective, because that is how they have evolved over the course of millennia.
And in high population densities.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
there was also intense culture selection. What was it? When the first dynasty in China was established, they basically practiced eugenics.
Yep.
Well, I'm saying if you were put in a, like, you know, it's like the subway, you're spatial. So white people generally have culturally like a certain amount of space that they're not comfortable with other people entering that. And your Asian people are much more comfortable with less space in between them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at the differences in locations where we adapted, right?
In that sense, I'm a racial realist. In terms of intelligence, I think intelligence is a soul function. But like, no, I mean, I agree with you. I'm a racial realist, and races are different. And I wouldn't say better words.
How do you believe they're different, Doovid?
Hold on. That's a great fucking. So you're a racial realist, but at the same time, you're saying that all races are equal previously. So you're kind of like flip-flopping there a bit.
Well, I'm saying I look at the value. I'm a universal humanist. I judge all people the same, and I look at intelligence as coming from, not the physical realm, and therefore it's unlikely that intelligence would differ people to people. But obviously, people look different, and people are adapted to the environment and climate that we came from, and okay, there's migrations and relatively you might be reliant upon the benefits of Western culture. So you might be able to move to Africa, but you're going to need air conditioning and houses and dwellings, as opposed to maybe the native Africans in that area are going to function.
I'm from a very warm climate. I'd be fine, but me personally,
long term, we don't do well in those kind of climates.
But whatever the area, I'm saying there is certain.
I'm just saying, man. Put me in.
I'm racial realism is like I'm not blind. I'm saying, and yes, I noticed someone that might have light skin.
So okay, that's a good starting point. That's a great starting point. So you are a racial realist. That's where I'm at.
Sometimes you see, Jews have more an urban, what in terms of like the structure,
metropolitan existence.
Well, even you might look at a Jew, you might look at my physique, and he's like, okay, he's kind of like scrappy and lanky, but that might actually be more adaptive for urban living than the type.
Well, that's because you are comfortable because of the existence that Europeans have created for you.
Well, so
you're welcome.
I say even
you're welcome.
Even physically, so I'm saying like the farm labor or the type athletic labor. And it's just like.
But you don't believe there's been any mental adaptation somehow in all this time? No mental adaptation.
Because I believe,
even though we can scientifically prove that,
I'm saying
brain volume, brain size, all those things change. So clearly, even if you're saying that is the mechanism by which that is, say just for sake of argument, that's the antenna that you use to connect to this higher plane. that would make you more functional in connecting to this higher plane.
I mean, possibly, but I'm going to stick with my belief that intelligence and consciousness arises from a non-physical element, and yeah,
but you still need a mechanism by which
the mechanism
to
of it
to
is
that non-physical element.
In the translation. So if there is brain differences and the ability to so if you came in, like, I was mentioning, like, okay, calculus was largely developed in France, some England and Swiss and German, but largely
European.
France. But saying that it's the concept of, you heard my Platonic argument about the concept of a chair or the perfect circle is a non-physical element, that you have even the idea of a human.
To Plato's, what is the reddest red, right? What is the essence?
Yeah.
And
but all that comes from a people that share at least a 4% DNA with Neanderthal, which gave us larger brain volume, which gave us the ability to perceive those concepts.
Yeah, but saying the essence of the thing resides in the spiritual realm, not the material realm. So when we talk about humans, or even like whiteness, or you might group yourself together, but obviously, Kaiser, Norvin, and Rory are very different, and fundamentally, if you're lined up against each other, you're not really the same. In the concept that you're grouped together, that's not a physical material concept. That's something from the spiritual realm. It's a concept.
I guarantee we'd all genetically lump pretty close together.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're trying to
but you're not the
separate
same
it. But if I'll leave it, like, for the sake of argument, I've been willing to give you. Like, I don't even want to argue. I don't even want to, like.
That's Plato.
I don't even want to. But I don't even want to, like. So for the sake of argument, I'll give you that. Hey, this intelligence comes from the spiritual realm, because that's a whole other conversation. You had that conversation with JF. I don't want to rehash that. But we'll just, for the sake of argument, give you that. But what I'm saying is that you cannot deny that all these concepts, these higher intellectual concepts, have came from people with higher brain volume.
I'm not an expert in phrenology to know whether that's accurate.
Not phrenology, dude. Phrenology is measuring the lumps on people's heads to determine personality shit. We're not talking about phrenology.
Exactly. Phrenology is not even actual science.
We're talking about anatomy.
We're talking about anatomy of the actual brain. None of those concepts came out of Africa. None of those concepts came out of people with lower intellectual process. None of those concepts came out of freaking Aboriginal. None of those concepts came from sub-Saharan came from Aboriginal.
You're looking at the short side of modern history. Like,
I'm talking about thousands of years.
But where did algebra come from? Where did algorithms come from?
From people that were still descendant from the Caucasus Mountains.
So I mean, why is it 360 degrees? Where does our original astrology? It comes from the Babylonian.
All of those people. None of those people are sub-Saharan African. None of those people are Aboriginal fucking Australians.
We're saying they're not European.
And the further you go back in time, the wider the Middle East gets.
Even relatively. Certainly, a lot of Greek wisdom is descended from the Egyptian wisdom, and
Mediterranean,
which were not sub-Saharan Africans.
Well, I'm saying you're just picking on sub-Saharan Africans for some point, arguing the point.
But no, I'm huge. But you got to think about that's a massive, huge portion of the populace, right? So we're talking about sub-Saharan Africans. We're talking about what I'm saying is if you take people with lower IQs, with lower brain volume, genetically, physically, anatomy to their brain volume, they are incapable of conceiving of those concepts. Those concepts all came from people with larger brain volume.
Well, saying if you just you want me to be in defense of Africans, and I'd have to do my research, versus if you're saying on a world population and the benefits, and saying that no, I mean, a lot of what society was built upon did not come from Europe. It did not come from the white man. It came from Babylon. It came from the Muslims. It came from
which are all people that came from the Caucasus Mountains. Those are all the same people. Those are all the same people with 4% genetic Neanderthal DNA with larger brain volumes. Those are all the same people.
Yeah, and actually a lot of those people were white, even by modern definitions, if you go back in time. It was later on from the Arab Peninsula, you had people that had Negroid admixture that invaded in. But if we look at a lot of the artwork and the written descriptions, a lot of the Levantine people were white. The Egyptians were Mediterranean type Caucasoids, so they weren't even Arabs as we think of them being today.
Exactly.
That's probably revisionist. And I mean, likely...
No, there's evidence.
Those are literally from their own drawings and from their own writings. Like it's literal from their own fucking words.
You're saying,
there's no revisionism to it. It's from their own words.
I'm saying, where does our numeric system come from? It's not using a 10-base system that didn't come from Europe. That came from either the Middle East or India. Presumably it came.
Which are all fucking traditionally. Those are the same people that have a larger brain volume from Neanderthals. It's the same fucking people.
I'm not an expert in what you're talking about. I mean, it seems a little bit shady. So you're saying, okay, Indian people, they're included. Arabs are included.
Straight up Pilpul, dude.
So yeah, he's doing Pilpul. David's the Pilpul king.
All you're doing is excluding Africans. Or saying you're saying, okay, but they're not Africans. Like you're just like, let's pick on.
No,
Africans.
what I'm trying to get you. No, so at the end of the day, what my end result is to get you to realize that people with lower IQs and lower brain volume are incapable of those concepts.
I mean, not because I think those people.
Pilpul.
So have universities in Kenya. You're saying the universities in Kenya don't teach calculus?
The Kenyans are the Jews of Africa,
No, the Nigerians are the Jews of Africa.
I mean, you make like everybody you're going to include them and saying to exclude who. So you're
saying that these concepts were introduced to them later.
Well, right. Saying these concepts
they didn't come up with those concepts on their own, even though they have the same access to your same spiritual world. They didn't come up with those concepts on their own.
You have your general.
Hey, chat.
You have your general biblical.
David, can I get in real quick? Hey, chat. If you want Kaiser to do another shot of Everclear, press 1.
Yeah, I mean, according to your biblical understanding, like your prophecies of Daniel, you have your rise and fall of nations, where it's Egypt, and then Assyria, then Persia, then Babylon.
Dude, but we're talking about evidence support. What can be proven?
But
what can be proven.
That's relatively accurate with the archaeological historical record that Egypt was one of the first great world powers, and then after that it was Assyria, then Persia, then
and none of those people Greece, were sub-Saharan Africans or Aboriginal.
Yes, who cares? I'm saying, why do you keep on pointing out?
I'm pointing out the people with the lower IQs that are incapable of coming up with these concepts.
There were different nations. I'm saying the Greeks were a weaker power compared to Persia or Assyria, whoever they fought. And then there were Circes, and then eventually the Greeks rose up and they became a greater power.
They're all Neanderthal-derived Caucasoids.
They weren't the same people. When the Assyrians were the greater power, but the Greeks rose to defeat them.
But the Assyrians were, I remember correctly, the Assyrians were one of the ones that were actually Indo-European, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, they were Aryans.
Yes. They all share this genetic link of crossbreeding with Neanderthals, which gave them a larger brain volume.
I mean, personally, I reject that history. So
that's genetically provable.
We're talking past each other.
That's genetically provable, though. Okay, so let me ask you this: do you believe in genetics?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you believe in genetics, these things are genetically provable.
I'm a race realist.
Okay, so these things are genetically provable. I'm just
projecting what faculties and features arise from the soul, and which ones arise from the body.
What I'm saying,
and the ones that arise from the soul,
genetically provable,
have very little factor.
Do you believe Neanderthals existed?
No, I don't believe in evolution. I believe in man was created in our present form.
What do you think Neanderthals are?
I mean, they're just a figment. They're just some sort of historical revisionism. I mean, just like
they're actually genetically provable, though. Like we've actually pulled genetic DNA evidence from
there's some fossils. There might even be thousands of skulls and some genetics. But I mean, to me, that's false history.
What?
What do you mean? Hold on. Let's really flesh this out. Let's not like what do you mean it's false history? Like genetically, like you believe in genetics, right?
Genetics, so I reject evolution.
Believe in genetics.
I do not believe that we arose from lower life forms. God created.
Okay, that's okay. Let's not even get there. Hold on. Let's not even. We're not even talking about, coming from apes, anything like that. Let's not even get there. We'll just leave that at the bottom, right?
Or coming from Neanderthals.
I'm sure. No, we didn't come from Neanderthals. We share a common ancestor, but that's completely different. So genetically, we can prove, if you believe in genetics, genetically we can prove that Neanderthal is a different species. That is 100% fact, provable.
Yeah, I mean, these are varying line. Like, just like race realism, what's the border between race? What's the border between species?
Okay.
And if you say, okay, these are questionable. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to say there's certain border definition, you're saying that.
Well, dude, but the thing I was trying to get to was,
if you're going to try to say that you're going to try to say that blacks are a different species than whites.
I'm not even
I mean, the fact is that
Dude, you've never answered what do you think Neanderthals were?
You're saying the species that whatever the few hundred bones that could be dug up and
how do you explain Neanderthals?
I don't know why I have to explain them. It's saying to the.
But do you have a theory as to what they were? Like, if I asked another creationist, they would at least make up some shit like they were the Nephilim or something. You can't even do that.
Well, I could, but I'm saying I haven't thought about it to do it. I'd have to look it up. Like, I'm a research kind of guy. I'm not just going to make.
I would suggest that you do your research on that because it's genetically provable that they are a different species.
I've studied this, and I don't think
they are a different species.
Genetically provable. But you're saying that they don't have 23 chromosomes.
Lots of species.
23 chromosomes.
Lots of species have 23 chromosomes. That doesn't make them human.
Well, I'm saying typically, what do you mean genetically? You're saying if they didn't have 23 chromosomes.
Genetically, they are a different species. They're speciation, as we understand it.
But they do have 23 chromosomes.
Lots of species have different 23
Is that
chromosomes.
Yes or no? Or you don't know?
Yes. No, they do have 23 chromosomes, yes. Well, actually, they have 24. 23 is a fused chromosome that humans have. It's a little different than most species, but they have similar chromosome makeup, yes, because we have a shared ancestor. But they are speciation. They are different.
And your claim is today that if they were a speciation, a different species, that would mean that if one of them mated with a human, that if it produced an offspring, that offspring would not be able to continue to reproduce, like a mule or something like that. Or are you saying that if
no, because there's sister species, there are sister species that exist where they are able to create viable offspring.
So I'm saying if it's the same species, like a dog, you have a mutt. Saying that it's dogs of different breeds are not different.
Those are different breeds. That's not different species. There's a big difference.
Yeah. So the difference is offspring. So according to what you're saying you're genetically they're different species. So that implies that they can't breed with humans.
No, they can't breed with humans.
Where the line
no,
is, dude.
That's not where the line is. So
here we go.
Different species really are capable. Yeah, Kaiser's very well versed on this.
The liger.
Okay, so for example, we have several subspecies that are capable of interbreeding with each other. We're a little bit farther from subspecies with Homo neanderthalis, but what we have in the terms of genetic information is Y DNA that is from a male. Right, so only fathers. So Y DNA from Neanderthals. We have 0 mDNA, which is mama, female DNA from Neanderthals, which suggests that only the male offspring of these unions were fertile, whereas the females were incapable of gestating a viable young.
But so if there was I mean, I doubt they had
they could breed together.
I doubt they had marriage.
Offspring, but
if they had multiple kids, males and females, the males would have been able to continue to reproduce with humans, but the females would not have been able to produce children, or they would have produced what would what would
non-viable offspring? Yeah,
we don't know. Either they would have been able to produce, Neanderthal children, or non-viable human hybrid children. That's because of the genetic evidence. There is no matrilineal Neanderthal DNA within modern humans.
And this is from the specimens of bones that have been dug up.
Yeah, this is from the mapping of the Neanderthal genome and its comparison to the human genome.
And saying, so what? Who cares about the Neanderthals anyways?
Well, I care about the Neanderthals.
I do, because we share 4%. Yeah, we share 4% DNA match with them. So
actually, possibly more. Have you guys heard that? There's some speculation that it could be more.
It's obviously different with different people.
What's that have to do with what we're talking about? You're saying,
because what we're talking about is that
people, you're saying Africans have a higher.
They don't have. No, they have 0% Neanderthal DNA. Asians and Europeans, Asians and Caucasoids
could breed.
Asians and Caucasoids have a percentage of Neanderthal DNA. Asians actually share a common ancestor. What is it? I always forget what it's called. It starts with a D.
Homo Denisovans.
Denisovans. There you go. There's another hominid, because at the time when Homo sapien made its rise to kind of world dominance, there were around 6 other hominids that were roaming the planet at the time.
Who conquered Sicily? You're saying those weren't black Africans that conquered Sicily. Those were like northern African non.
Those were Semitic people. The Moors were Semitic people. They weren't Negroids.
They were Levantine, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying Sicilians have Levantine blood in them, not Negroid blood?
Not Negroid. I mean, they may have some now because, not Spain, but Portugal, they took the black slaves that were kicked out of England.
Yeah. So modern history is a little bit different
your point, that interbreeding is fully functional. You could have
of course it is.
A black and a Chinese, a black.
Of course. Oh yeah, no one's arguing that. No one's arguing that.
All of them are going to be able to produce viable human offspring.
No one's arguing that. Of course.
There are sometimes some problems, with mental health. There is also some issues with getting bone marrow. And there was a study I read that actually biracial couples are the most likely to have stillbirth.
So what difference does it make that? So you're saying, I was giving your biblical account, which is also a pretty historical account about the most powerful nations. And
hey, Doovid, have you ever watched?
And so you're making the point all those had Neanderthal blood, and I was like, so what? What difference does that make?
Because that's
Neanderthals were smarter than modern humans, dude. But that's the point.
That's the point. Is that by crossbreeding with Neanderthals, that was the whole point. Is by crossbreeding with Neanderthals, they gave us a larger brain volume, which gave us a higher IQ. Which makes us capable of coming up with these higher intellectual concepts.
You're saying like Dravidian Indians also are part Neanderthal. It's only Africans. It's only Africans. Africans are the only people that aren't.
Sub-Saharan Africans, like Aboriginals. Yes, there's a few different racial groups that do not share those genetic similarities. Which are incapable.
I appreciate the genetic lesson.
Which are incapable of holding the same brain volume and the same IQ volume, which makes them incapable of coming up with the same concepts, and makes them.
We were talking about the rise of Europe, and I was telling you the rise of Europe is a recent phenomenon, only in the last few hundred years, and historically we know that the center of civilization. Which it switched from nation to nation. I said Egypt, Assyria,
Caucasoids,
Persia, Babylon. So what? They're still different nations.
Who cares? Nations are artificial boundaries, right? Our nations are artificial boundaries. We're talking about ethnicity.
Yeah, but you're saying that you just made the point. Then, so why not? You're saying nations? That there's no.
That doesn't mean they don't have a meaning.
Indians and Europeans.
That doesn't mean they don't have a meaning.
Indians and Europeans.
Go ahead,
Kaiser. Have the same percent of Neanderthal blood.
Please, Rory.
Yes.
I figured it out.
Okay.
All he's gonna do is obfuscate.
I figured that out a long time ago.
I was going to say we have different worldviews.
That's all David does. Like
we have
different worldviews. It's the difference in worldviews. Just to split hairs. No, man. We know your debate tactic is to obfuscate.
I don't see what he's saying. He's saying we're trying to come to a common ground to have.
And now you're obfuscating once again.
But at the same time, just because we share this genetic link, all those nations. So my point was, all those nations are capable
to me, it seems
of rising
like
to power.
Obfuscating, with the whole Neanderthal blood. I don't see.
Because that's the reason those
we're obfuscating because we're using actual scientific data.
All those nations are capable of rising to power because they share that same genetic link. But that doesn't mean that I should allow people who don't hold hold European values at the highest to enter my nation.
Well, right? I'm saying that you should try. I'm saying all you could do is try, or you could fight. So you say, okay, you had a period where the Greeks rose and became more powerful than the Assyrians, and you say, okay, that there was the huge battles, and I mean historically, if you read Thucydides, and you had the Battle of Marathon and whatever like that, and it was a historical phenomenon that the Greeks won the Battle of Marathon or whatever. The chances were that they wouldn't have won it, and that changed the course of history. And you're saying, so today you have similar. You're saying that there's a rise and fall of nations. You had European.
Yes, but do you think that nations should just allow themselves to fall? Is what I'm saying.
You're not in disagreement with my historical understanding about the.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. That, I agree with it.
Europe only rose to power in the last few hundred years, and Europe has already fallen to power. The power structure now is here on the North American continent.
Well, exactly. And I agree with that. No, I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is that nations should not allow for themselves to fall willingly, is all I'm saying. Right?
Yeah, so we should not allow is kind of a pointless term. What does not allow mean? So either you're a warrior.
Literally Pilpul right there. You're taking the word.
He's doing Pilpul.
Yeah, that's the purpose of Pilpul, is to flush out the truth and say, what is you said a vague term. You said a vague term, not allow. So not allow.
I would say that it's not that we allowed this to happen, it's that it was done to us.
Yeah, you shouldn't lay down and allow yourself to be conquered and allow yourself to be overrun with fucking people of a different fucking thought process. Obviously, it happens. But
that's the different point I'm making. So if you're saying, okay, the Africans and whether you're talking about being the seat of power, being the key world civilization, or you're talking about just being a nation. So if you're saying just like the Africans shouldn't bow down and let other people colonize and take their
they don't really have a choice because they
should fight.
So they don't really have a choice.
But, I mean, you would advise the Nigerians to fight.
Oh, I would 100% advise the Nigerians to fight. Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, but if you're looking, I mean, I would make that claim from, certainly from the biblical perspective.
They should fight. Every nation and every people should fight for their own existence and their own stronghold. That doesn't mean that they're capable of doing it.
Own existence, or you're fighting to be, the key nation of the world.
When it comes to European nations, they're one and the same.
So European nations have been declined. What's the average intelligence of an Anglican?
It's 110. So
you're saying your average Anglo has 110 IQ?
That's the average.
I thought it was just 100.
Okay, well, we'll say 100.
No. I'm going to do some Pilpul right quick. This dude said Anglican.
Yeah, I meant Anglo, but
no. You said Anglican, which has a very direct meaning. You can't use words that you don't. No. Doovid, you can't use words that you don't mean because words have very clear meanings.
Yeah, but that's not Pilpul, because I
no. You said.
Hold on. Let's not devolve the conversation.
There's less than a million people affiliated with the Anglican Church in America.
Exactly. So
hold on. There might be 10 million plus people with Anglo blood.
You asked for the average IQ of the Anglican.
So you said that's 110.
No, stop that, David. It's my turn to Pilpul. You asked for the average IQ of Anglican. Rory gave you the average IQ of an Anglican.
110.
No. Stop, dude. It's my turn to Pilpul.
What's your Pilpul? It's like there was a question, you gave the answer. So now I'm asking, what's the average IQ of an Anglo? The average IQ of an Anglican Christian is 110. What's the average IQ of an Anglo?
100.
100.
Yeah.
So that's average. So there's no likelihood that Anglos are ever going to be at power again. They've basically fallen off.
It's always been, but you see
there was a period in history, just like the Babylonians rose and fell from power in the Greeks.
But do you think you should give that
up? Funny you keep mentioning the civilization.
Ancient history.
Cultural civilizations your people destroyed.
Weren't the Babylonians a shoot off of the original?
Hold on, Norman. Hold on. Kaiser, let's let Norman go right here. Norman hit the fucking.
You want to blame it on the Jews, but you agree that it's just a history lesson that the Anglos.
Well, I agree. The Jews probably had their hand in the collapse of both Babylon and Egypt. I don't think civilization just fall dead one day.
And the Anglos saying that the Anglos have already collapsed. That happened already.
Well, that's definitely because of Jews.
That was definitely because of Jews. That's his story. That's within modern history, and that's 100% provable.
Well, I mean, the rise of Anglos was because of Jews. When Oliver Cromwell met Menashe ben Israel in the 1650s and begged the Jews to come to your country because you guys needed money, because you guys had messed up your country and blew all your money and overspent, and you begged the Jews to come back in 1650 in order to finance your ventures. And the whole reason that you guys were able to defeat the Spanish was because the Spanish had expelled the Jews. And
the Spanish are fucking the same fucking diaspora. So,
but I'm saying, what was the difference that led to the decline of Spain and the rise of England? It was the Jews. When Spain expelled the Jews, and then the Jews ended up in England, the Jews were not the cause of the decline of England; they were the cause of the rise of England.
But also now there's the cause of the decline.
And that's factual history. Who developed?
Yeah, factual history is now you're also the cause of the decline.
I mean, your leaders. I don't want to say beg the Jews, but to some extent they begged the Jews to come there in 1650. And Oliver Cromwell, he rescinds the ban from.
It's more the other way around. That the Jews were working to get back into England for a long time, and
you guys needed the money. You guys bankrupted your country. You needed the money, so you needed the Jews to come back in the country. And the Jews who had just left Spain had a bunch of money because they had just left Spain. A lot of them took their money with them. And
because they ripped out Spain's infrastructure out from underneath them. Yeah.
But the rise of England was directly correlated to the fact that England.
You know what? Next time, let's pull a Vespasian. Don't let them take any of their stuff. And we build the Colosseum.
You could try by saying that's what Spain tried to do and saying England rose to power because of the Jews.
Successor to Rome, dog. So
had England not accepted the Jews into their country, had not asked us to come there, you guys would have remained a third-class country.
And who would have been on top of that? Who would have been on top of that? Spain or the Jews?
Well, Spain probably would have just defeated you people easily. It was only because the Jews sided with the England over the Spanish.
They sided with England because England gave them a slight freaking, England was like, hey, we won't fucking murder you on sight because you're, deceptive fucking people that destroy nations.
You needed our money. You needed our science. You needed our high IQs. You needed
not science. Help. We needed your money because you stole it from Spain. Yeah.
But whatever, you guys took it, you guys needed, and that's how you built up. And
it was the time of empires. It was the time of empires, so money flows left and right. But money flows.
So historically, the Spanish Empire rose, the Armada, the English defeated the Spanish Armada, and then English became the next power, and the Jews it were integral because the Jews sided with England. Had the Jews not sided with England, there's basically zero chance that England would have rose to a superpower.
So this is what you're telling me. This is what I've gleaned from your story here, your argument here. The Jews suckle on a teat of a host country, get rich, cause problems, get kicked out, take their money with them, and say, hey,
take those other people's money with them.
Hey, we were oppressed. We were kicked out of this nation we've been in for, however many centuries or decades or whatever. And then you go to the next bidder. You go in there, you finance their survival or whatever, and then you go and suckle off the teat again.
Because
until you find the next highest bidder.
Because we're bankers, that's what we did. I mean, we invented banking. The whole reason that England developed the futures and
banking was because banking is literally the fucking leech that sucks on the fucking that sucks the blood out of every nation it's ever touched.
Because you're anti-banking, but I mean, had the Jews not came into England, England probably never would have developed a stock and futures.
If we wouldn't have had banking from the beginning, history would be a completely different fucking scenario. Maybe we wouldn't have been where we are today. So
had the Jews
that's a completely different conversation.
Had the Jews not financed England, England would have never rose to power.
We would have been a lot better off today.
I'm saying you admit
exactly.
That. You're saying so you would have just been like the sub-Saharan Africans. You would have been like
no, we wouldn't have been sub-Saharan Africans because we're able to conceive of the same concepts. We're able to fucking build seaworthy ships. We're able to build fucking structures over fucking one story. We're able to have future fucking tents, which sub-Saharan Africans were incapable of before Europeans got there. Think about so let's
you'd be like Iceland or Finland.
Since we're in this thought process,
without the Jews,
hold on. Since we're in this thought process,
Finland.
Let's take hold on because Spain wouldn't have rose to power without the influence of Jews fucking building up their infrastructure, right? Without them fucking background fucking puppet master fucking controlling their shit. So let's just take Jews completely out of the equation completely. Right? Let's remove them from the equation completely.
I got a roommate, so I got to. We can't just keep on talking over each other. I can't be yelling.
Yeah, I know. I just
made the point. Norvin made the point that the Jews led to the downfall of England, and I added the point that the Jews also led to the rise of England.
Right, because the Jews made Stonehenge.
No, because the Jews were bankers, and we took the money from Spain and invested it in England.
The money from Spain.
So here's the thing, Rory, Norvin, we just got trolled into discussing the JQ. That's all this is. This is Pillpool to discuss the JQ.
It's related because
stop. Norvin, no, Doovid. I'm at the point intellectually right now, meaning buzzed, where I'm looking at all of the circular logic that's been going around to say that you're either an amazing troll or all that time you spent in Israel studying really made you a Pillpool master.
I'm a student of Jewish history. I'm giving you names and dates and places.
That's Pillpool, right? That's Pillpool.
I'm telling you, Manasseh ben Israel and his meetings with Kamral, I could pull the book off the shelf that has the.
Of course you could, and I bet it was written by a great Jewish scholar.
It was written by Manasseh ben Israel, the person who negotiated the return of Jews to England with.
How did I know it was a Jew? The nose knows, right?
Because that's what I study. I know my Jewish history.
I'm just kidding. But
I know the rise of banking, and I know that England came to power because
and the Rothschilds, with his red sign. I get it.
This is before the Rothschilds. This was before the Rothschild family. We're talking.
But he was trying to get to a point.
But I'm saying because he's got second-rate scholarship or doesn't know his own history. You want a history lesson? I'll give you a history lesson.
Kaiser, you have to learn to just yell over him.
Well, yell over him or look at my,
You knew genetics. I let you explain genetics, but it's saying you want a history lesson. I've studied this,
So what my point was though. Let's not get too far.
Rory,
hold on, Kaiser. Hold on, Kaiser. Let's look at world history had we removed the Jews from the equation.
Well, so
the Spanish wouldn't have gotten to their point where they were. So the Spanish wouldn't have been capable of conquering England, right? So if you roll it back, just roll the tape backwards. Roll the tape backwards. If we didn't have Jews picking winners and losers and controlling the world stage, then it would be in a completely different scenario. So you've proven every alt-righter's conversation of the JQ picking winners and losers and controlling the world stage for their own well-being.
No, because God runs the world. But what's the common factor running from the rise and fall of civilization, Egypt to Babylon to Syria to Persia?
Jews building up civilizations, and then once they get found out, they fucking run and hide and turn someone else against that civilization.
When Egypt was the main civilization, that's where the heart of the Jewish community was. When Syria, when Babylon, when Greece, when Rome, all of those people controlled Israel at their height of power, to after the destruction of Israel and the diaspora, that Spain, when Spain was the main power, that's where the Jews were. When England was the main power, that was, the Jews were coming in there. When
You're proving our point, David.
You're proving the JQ 100%.
What is the JQ? The JQ is that the Bible is true and that we're God's chosen people.
No, the JQ is that the Jews pick winners and losers, and that they control the world stage for their own existence.
Stop.
That is the one who controls the world. You're saying
stop. All right. You want to get into whether or not the Jews are God's chosen people?
But I don't.
Why? No, stop.
That's what the Bible says.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It says that a pact between Abraham and his children would bless the world, right? And then we get to, there's
different pacts, and I agree. There's a pact with Abraham.
David, I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna pull the shit out of this, except for the fact that I really am interested in the genealogies of the Bible. So why would somebody from the tribe of Judah be the chosen when the tribe of Israel were the chosen?
Are you Christian identity?
No, he's definitely a Jew, right?
No, I'm saying you. I mean,
am I questioning my identity?
No, are you Christian identity? Are you like going with white people or the real Israelites?
No, not at all. I'm just saying that you look at the blessing given to Abraham, and then you look at the Jews, none of that has occurred. They're the minority of the entire globe, save for, indigenous tribes that have been separated from civilization forever.
Well, I'm saying, the world power has always been the power that controlled Israel.
Right, because it was an economic glory hole that allowed for shut up. It was an economic glory hole that allowed for Europe to trade with Asia. That's the only reason that Israel was important. But guess what? Israel was important, not Judah.
There's different factors.
So why would the Israelis, the true Israelis, call themselves Jews nowadays? If not only to commit subterfuge against people that call themselves Christian today. That's the only way that Jews become the chosen people, because it's pretty clear in the Bible, in the Torah, the first books of the Old Testament, that Judah and Israel are separate, and nobody coming from the tribe of Israel would call themselves Jew, because that is the brother Judah.
You want a Bible lesson? I'm saying,
I'm just telling you what I know. I don't need a Bible lesson. This is from the Bible. I'm telling you exactly what it says.
You want me to quote the verses? I have multiple copies. I have many Bibles here. If you want.
Hey, no, because that's more pill pull. That's more obfuscation. Rory, Norvin, this is what I suggest. We're never going to get anywhere with this guy tonight. because he's got the full pill, pull, pull. He's got the full pill, pull, pill going on.
That's what I do. Like I studied Talmud for 20.
Yes, I know.
Talmud for 20 years now.
That's what you did. Yes, you did pill pull. You analyzed the Talmud.
I've been studying Talmud like an average of an hour a day for 20 years now.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. You do that and you analyze it to the point where you're literally splitting hairs over word choice. And so you obfuscate to the point where nothing gets accomplished. So Rory Norvin, dude, all this is going to do, Rory, is harm our brand if we continue at this right now.
Well, I'm going to the point where it's 2:30 in the morning. I'm about to call it anyway.
Are you honestly searching for the truth?
No, you're not. You're just trolling.
You're trying to sell your brand, or are you trying to search for the truth?
I'm all about the truth, and I said that at the very beginning. When we find stats and figures that bear out, we're all about that. But when you start splitting hairs over the,
But we are in agreement that the correlation between the rise and fall of nations is a connection between the Jewish people and Israel throughout all of recorded history.
You're right. Rome got a fancy ass Colosseum when they confiscated all of y'all's money, right? At any rate, nothing's going to get accomplished, and we've been played. We got trolled hard tonight, boys. So
I'm used to it. I've dealt with him before.
I mean, I don't know. We're trolling. You asked.
Of course, yeah.
You messaged me. You asked to speak to me.
I know, I did, and I did not anticipate the direction.
Trolling would imply that like I came to you and am subversive. So you came to me, and you mean presumably?
Let me say that I have 100% enjoyed the conversation.
As have I. I really have.
I was happy to talk.
I've enjoyed the conversation. I think Kaiser's had too many shots to enjoy the conversation.
This is true. This is very true.
I do think that there is a difference in what we're talking about. I think that we've come to a dead end to where we're going to run into. If you're going to,
we have different Weltanschauungs. Saying this, it's pretty obvious, and that's why this conversation's been going on 3 hours, and we've hardly made any grounds because we just see the world so differently.
Yeah, I agree, but I think that if we have
made I've learned things from you, and we have made some common ground.
No, I agree. I've learned some things from you as well. I think it was a productive conversation. I think it could have been more productive, but I think that obviously people come to the world from different filters, and we come at the world from different ways. And at the end of the day, I'm glad we had the conversation.
At some point, debating history is not really a worthwhile venture. It's saying if it's something I don't know about, like if you're talking about Neanderthal DNA, it just pays to let you explain what you're talking about.
The thing that annoys me, Doobit, is you went on a show today to debate evolution, and you probably don't even actually understand the theory of evolution. I mean, if you don't understand Neanderthals and the idea of Neanderthal admixture, you really don't understand evolution. So, I mean, you argue shit that you don't understand.
No, as I understand the theory of evolution, you said I'm not an expert in genetics.
Well, the thing is, think about none of us here are on JF's level of literally studying genetics.
I conceded to JF that he knows much more about that, and the arguments I gave were more general scientific, the level of proof.
It's more pill pull.
It wasn't scientific, it was pill pull, dude, but I listened to part of it. You just pill pulled with JF.
I mean, to me, pill pull's a compliment.
We don't mean it that way, trust me.
I mean, pill pull's just like high IQ.
No, that's arguing semantic.
I took 2-3 years out of my life to go to Jerusalem and study and master the art of pill pull.
I took 2 years out of my life to go to law school and master the art of pill pull.
And that's what Alan Dershowitz said, is that a person with a yeshiva
of course, that's what it said about Jewish training in law school. Dude, I'm well aware.
You're an Alan Dershowitz fan.
No, I'm not, but I've been to law school. So
And you had there were Orthodox Jews that you in your class or Jews?
Actually, none. I had 0. Most of my cohorts were black or Hispanic, and my teachers, Catholics, Anglicans, no Jews.
Well, are you a meme, or you say where you're from, or you don't want to say, or it doesn't matter?
I'm originally from Texas.
I'm saying, what, law school. I mean, look at the demographics. Like presumably, if it was a top law school, there'd be more likely to be Jews there.
Yeah, probably because
and if it was
because of nepotism.
If it was in a major urban area, it'd be more likely to be Orthodox Jews there.
Doesn't matter. Nepotism. You can Ben Shapiro this all the shit you want, man. But let's face it. Look, Doovid.
But he's saying you agree that different nations have different skills, and he's saying, yeah, the Jews, we're pilpul masters. That's what we do.
Doovid, that's what we've been saying this entire stream, which you have been.
That's what we've been saying this entire stream, and you disagree with it the whole time.
But to me, it's
Doovid. Now that's more pilpul. That's more pilpul.
It's like saying Aboriginals have good eyesight or good memories for geographical.
You've been disagreeing with that exact same point the entire fucking stream.
No, I'm a racial realist in that sense.
Yeah, you're a racial realist, except when it comes to actual intelligence.
Because that derives from the soul.
Except now, you're calling the intelligence of the Jews is superior. Just shut the hell up, dude. For one,
because the Jews have a different soul, also.
The Jews have a different soul than everyone else.
Soul.
So if I converted to Judaism, hold on, everybody, shh. If I converted to Judaism tomorrow, would I gain a new soul?
Yes, in Jewish theological theory, you would go to the mikveh, the holy water, and when if you're not already circumcised and you got circumcised, when you come up from the water, you would come up with you would come up because I don't agree with
selling off my skin to fucking cosmetic industries.
Converted, you would acquire a Jewish soul.
You know what, guys? I suggest to my
it's almost 3 a.m. over here. I'm gonna call it. I greatly appreciate the entire conversation, David. I'm glad we came on. It was an amazing conversation. I hope we talk again in the future.
Okay, you got me on Twitter, so you can message me
for sure. I think we should definitely get you on our show in the future, and we got some more specifics to talk about. We'll have it on a specific topic.
Research. I prefer to prepare and know what I'm talking about, so I'll have the facts.
Well, exactly. Yeah, we'll do a more specific topic, and I'm going to call it there, guys. And y'all have a good night.
You guys.
Yeah, you as well.
Norvin, you got.
I was gonna say, Norvin, reach out to us. Verbo Tempestas. We're on Twitter, YouTube, all that jazz. Evolve Past. You can reach me on Twitter, all that stuff. Reach out to us. I'd love to talk to you more in the future.
You guys want to say some final words to the audience? I got to assume 20 people watching.
You're 20 people watching. Just check us out on Verbo Tempestas. Tuesdays, Fridays, 9 Eastern. YouTube. Come check us out. That's all.
All right.
Okay. God bless. Thanks for reaching out. Interesting conversation.
Dude, I actually do have something to say as a final thought. Dude, I love you. You bring a completely different perspective to everything that I've seen you do, and I have watched your preparation for the debate that was, yesterday. You're an amazing brain. You pilpul, but I can't slight you for that. That's what you've been trained to do. That's what you've learned, and you're very, very good at it. I'm sure your breadth of knowledge as far as the Old Testament goes is amazing, and I would love to pick your brain about that one day. Perhaps we can have that on one of our shows, over at Verbo Tempestas. And dude, if I would love to come on one of your shows again in the future.
My shows are likely if you're it may, if it's part of your interest, you know, they're more likely to be talking through like data like before. And I would like to do presentations.
Dude, drop the link to their channel in the chat.
To their channel?
Yeah.
For you?
Yeah. Or anyone listening, put it in the chat.
I don't have it. I'm gonna have to log on Twitter.
Give me a wrench, and well, I don't know where it is.
You as Kaiser, if you want to.
I'll do that real quick
in the Google Hangout internal chat, because you're not following the YouTube chat, Norvin. You need the Google Hangout internal chat.
Yeah, I'll put that in there right now. But
I have you on Twitter, but I closed my Twitter already. But I was saying I would like to do presentations of the historical migrations of the Jewish people, and even Norvin might find that interest. And I don't mind you people with opposing opinions. It makes it more interesting. And I have there is data. I have charts and books that have if you have a military background, but show the battles and the rise and fall of nations, and where Jews were and where they moved to. And I was hoping to do presentations on that, less so than actual streams like where we're just going to be talking at each other for a long time. More factual data, and then we could analyze the data.
And I agree with that. I'd like to do that, and I think
we could do a debate on a specific subject that was like because here we just kind of argued all over the place on completely different issues. So if you had a specific subject like multiculturalism in America, is it good for the whites? And I could present data on
really, is it good for anybody is the real question.
Well, because I recognize that it's conceivable or likely that it could be good for the Jews and not good for the whites. So I'm making a separate. It could
be good for the Jews, okay for the whites, and disastrous for everybody else.
Well, so that's why I present, and I'd have the research and the data to back that up. If we were talking
my final closing point is look into. This is homework for you, and I'll accept homework for me if you have any for me. Just look into, Latin gang ethnic cleansing. All right.
Latin.
Yeah, Latin gang ethnic cleansing. Look into that.
Are you talking about current, where the Mexicans clear the blacks out?
Yep.
You're talking about current American politics?
Yeah, it's happening today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm vaguely familiar. I don't know how much research or that.
Just Google it. Just Google it. All right.
I mean, that's unlikely. That's not an area of my expertise. It's unlikely that's something I'm gonna debate you. I'm saying if you did a stream, I might watch it.
No, this is just homework for you. Just look at it, Google it. All right, that's all I mean.
I'll try, but I'm saying I got so much on my table that I'm trying to research and study. I can't study everything. I'll admit to you, I don't have really any expertise at all on that subject.
That's funny because I'm an alcoholic and I study everything, dude.
Yeah, but saying time is limited and saying you gotta choose.
Yeah,
I've
gotta go to work and get on my phone and research shit that I'm interested in while I'm bored. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not important. I know a little bit about it as it pertains to American politics, but there's so much other stuff I'm in the middle of researching that I'm gonna develop expertise in that subject is unlikely. But yeah, I mean,
just Google it. I don't care if you're an expert in it. This is not for a debate. This is not for anything. This is just for edification. Look into the Latin ethnic cleansing, and that's all I mean. That's just that.
If you want to send me a few links to that,
yeah, I'll DM you on Twitter.
I'm presuming you know more about that topic than me, so if you want to recommend some reading material, I try to at least do some reading on the subject. But yeah, I prefer to stick to my areas of expertise. But yeah, if you forward me a few articles, I'll try to read them.
Yeah, we'll do. Anyways, shalom.
God okay. Bless. Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate you coming on.
Best, man. And I'd love to have you on our show in the future.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate the invite, and I'm sure Brundle's more likely to come onto your show right away because he's more, just talk about anything, shoot the breeze. But yeah, I'll come on. We'll come up with a topic and set a date, and just be in touch on Twitter, or you could comment on YouTube. But we're Twitter's fine. We're already DMing, so that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we might have counter. Maybe you get Brundle, Norvin, even some of the people that were listening tonight might see your show, and then we'll have you be in the same networking circles.
Yeah, sounds great, man. Do you mind if I plug tomorrow's show?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
All right. So tomorrow night on Verbo Tempestas, we have he's actually Jewish. He's a Jewish man who is also African American, and he's a wonderful, very talented artist, and very, 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 very far right.
What is the Sabbath? I'm saying he's not an Orthodox Jew. He's going to be streaming on the Sabbath.
Yeah, he's not Orthodox. He's actually a Christian. He's Jewish ethnically, but theologically, he's a Christian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like Luke Ford on that. Like, I don't stream on Sabbath or Jewish holidays. Friday night, Saturday night after sundown, I might stream, but like Friday nights, I never stream.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Our buddy Yosef Ozia is the same.
Well, I might watch it in replay.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. Thank you. But anyways, yeah. So tomorrow night we have John Proby, John JONPROBY.com. That's his website. You can check out some of his art. Super talented dude. Has a lot of cool ideas. He's kind of out there, but really cool ideas. Would love to see some of some of you guys that are in the chat there. David, I would love to have you on the show in the future, bro. And I'd love to come back on your show, for a more structured discussion.
It doesn't have to get structured with David. I'm sorry.
I'm usually pure autistic, so this just happened. Very rarely do I do it like an open stream on this. Usually, so it's more likely I'd come onto your show to do that. Usually I keep my YouTube to like autistic data presentations, but if you wanted to talk through something, where I was doing something interesting and you had insight on it, we could talk through the data together.
Yeah, man, sounds good.
And even if you know a lot about military history or something like that, we could message. We could look at like rise and fall of nations and look at maps and data. But I like to be grounded. And tonight was just because I was on the biggest stream I've ever done before that I decided to do a stream like this. But usually when I stream is always like maps, data, or a text.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I've been watching you. I started watching Brundlefly. And then I saw this character popping up, Duvid, who had some crazy, kind of talking points. And so I started following you. And then when I found out you were going to be on JF, I was like, all right, this dude's big league. I'm glad I've been following kind of what he's about.
I appreciate it. JF gave me a big opportunity. I'm older than him actually, but I appreciate him giving me the opportunity. And thanks for reaching out. Usually as of now, I'm not so big that I basically reply to all of my comments or Twitter, as of now that I have the time to do that.
Awesome, man. I bet you got a bunch.
And you see, I put you straight on. Like I didn't know who you were. You messaged me and I invited you straight on. I didn't even screen you.
No, and I appreciate the opportunity just to come on, man. Like I said, once I started looking into you, I was like, I've gotta invite this guy onto my show, because you're an interesting cat, and now that I know more what you're about, sort of.
We discussed that earlier. Like, I'm not the type where just like, okay, let's give our opinion on every single issue. Yeah, I'm more like people should speak about what they have expertise on. That's my style, as we discussed at the beginning of the stream.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said earlier, I'd love to have you on to discuss the Old Testament genealogy. That is something that I think would be a good discussion for us because it fascinates me, number one. And number two, I'm sure that's something you're very knowledgeable about.
Yeah, I could lay out because I'm saying generally, the progression of history according to a biblical genealogy in the rise of nations. Who do we come from?
With the Phoenicians and Tyre and all that. Yeah, man, let's do it. I've got to get. It's
almost 3 o'clock
my time.
I'm in Detroit. It's 2:49 here.
Yeah, I'm Central Time, so yeah, I've got to get me some shut eye. Also, I'm 2 shots in. I'm usually not this aggressive or mean when I have these debates, or discussions, but yeah,
He'll do that to you.
Yeah, and then a combination of me and Norvin causes people to tend to want to take one side or the other.
Don't be blaming me in this shit.
Anyways, Norvin, reach out. Doovid,
I already followed you on Twitter.
Fantastic. Doovid, I'm glad that we got to meet, man. Like I said, love to have you on our show sometime in the future. Good night, boys.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Have a great night. You want to say something to me, or you want to plug your stuff? You just talk to the 20 people watching, Norvin.
Well, I got another strike on my other channel, so I'm down to only 1 channel with any content on it. The other 2, I got everything set to private, so I can't get a 3rd strike. Because 3rd strike, you're deleted. But I created 2 other channels today, so I'll be uploading stuff again. Gonna try to do a video in the next 2-3 days. May not be streaming as much because it's a matter of time till I lose the streaming on the 1 channel. And it takes a phone number to confirm streaming with every channel you set up. So I may go back to just doing videos and not really streaming much at all. But yeah, I'll still be around. I always use Norvin Hobbs, so just always look for me with that name and you'll always find me.
Okay, yeah, good luck, and I assume we'll see each other again. And I enjoy you, saying you have you're a good counterbalance to me, and you're always willing to present the counter-Semitic counter narrative that makes these shows interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great night, and thank God, and I'll watch these videos later, and I don't have any plans for the more streaming. We'll see what happens. People see me on Twitter or YouTube. Feel free to leave comments or message me on Twitter. I'll do my best to get back to you. Okay, have a great night, everyone.